this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Tired of spills and stains on your sofa? Wash away your worries with Anabay. Anabay is the only designer sofa that's machine washable inside and out, starting at just $699. Plus, Anabay sofas are pet-friendly, stain-resistant, and feature changeable slip covers and modular pieces. Get up to 60% off site-wide with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Visit washablesofas.com to get yours now. That's washablesofas.com. Offers are subject to change and certain restrictions may apply.
There's a difference between liking a house and actually getting it. Redfin is built to make up that difference and close the gap between finding and owning the home for you. Redfin agents close twice as many deals as other agents. So when you find a home you love, you're not a step behind when it comes to making an offer. That means less watching great homes disappear and more focus on the one you'll call home. Redfin helps turn saved listings into real addresses. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Do you want to find a stress-free way to buy your next car? Start at CarMax and shop your way. And if you want to browse with confidence, get pre-qualified online with no impact on your credit score and shop cars within your budget. From luxury cars to family rides, CarMax has options for almost every price range, including more than 25,000 cars priced under $25,000. So, hey, want to get started? Just head to CarMax.com for details and get pre-qualified today. Want to drive? CarMax.
Cool Zone Media.
Hey everybody, Robert Evans here, and I wanted to let you know this is a compilation episode. So every episode of the week that just happened is here in one convenient and with somewhat less ads package for you to listen to in a long stretch if you want. If you've been listening to the episodes every day this week, there's going to be nothing new here for you, but you can make your own decisions.
All right, it's It Could Happen Here. It's me, it's Robert, and we are gathered here today to talk about one of the most annoying things that can happen on your telephone, which is that you can be sent a tweet from Gavin Newsom.
Which is, no one needed that.
Yeah, it's already really bad. I see really bad things on my telephone every day.
Uh-huh.
I don't need to see a tweet from Gavin Newsom. If you're not familiar with this, you're living a better life than me, and I'm proud of you.
Uh-huh.
But I'm going to give you some context here. For those of you who are not familiar, Gavin Newsom is the governor of California. He's also kind of been the presumptive 2028 Democratic candidate for quite a while. He's term limited out of running for California governor again, so he won't be doing that, and his term will end in January of 2027. He had for a while tried to dismiss claims that he was interested in the presidency, but he's been a lot more overt about it recently.
Yeah.
I don't believe any claims that he was not interested in this for a long time. He has definitely tried to cast himself this summer as a sort of leader of the resistance type figure.
Yeah.
He hasn't done that by, for instance, ordering the California National Guard to go home, protecting people from the masked men with guns snatching them in the street, or even standing up for trans kids. Instead, he has focused on, I guess, what you could generously call Twitter trolling. Well, we're going to get into it. It's extremely annoying. So about a week ago now, I think the 11th of August was when Newsom began his social media rebrand. He did this by posting about himself in all caps as America's favorite governor. His posts since then have mimicked Donald Trump has a pretty distinctive posting style, right?
Yeah.
Newsom's are written in all caps, which Trump doesn't tend to do. Trump tends to capitalize sporadically and as far as I can tell, entirely randomly. But Newsom's doing it in all caps. He overuses exclamation marks, I should say. This beef between the two of them is not new, right? Trump has called him new scum on Truth Social. I don't think Trump can claim the intellectual property to new scum. I've seen that one.
Yeah.
Like it's up there with like hair gel Hitler and Mussolini.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you're buying a firearm in California, you will hear someone say one of these things almost without fail.
Yeah.
The claim that Newsom's team is making is that he's like holding up a mirror to Trump's bigotry by doing this Trump-style posting. But I think in doing so, he's really illustrated that the difference between them is not as profound as you'd think or hope. He, in one example called Scott Pressler, Nancy Mace. Scott Pressler, gay, conservative, right-wing figure. And then he was called out for misgendering Pressler by, this will shock and amaze you, Tommy Lauren.
Wow. Yeah.
Which, no one...
Okay.
Yeah. He responded, quote, "You sound woke." This really isn't funny. It's just bigotry. Like, comparing gay men to women is an old, worn-out, and lazy jab.
Yeah.
So when you combine this with him having right-wing figures like Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon on his podcast...
And just for reference, folks, I don't know how much detail we can get into legally here, but this being our business, we are aware of the numbers different podcasts do. And Gavin Newsom's podcast is not like... It does okay, but there's certain podcasts about, for example, bad people in history that lap it several times. So like the star power that Gavin Newsom has, I'm not seeing it. Yeah. We're not talking about a guy who has shown evidence that he is capable of on his own generating like a super loyal fan base or continued interest in his personality. Now, I'm not saying that on its own isn't a bad thing. A lot of politicians who are very competent at certain things are not competent at that. And in fact, most of the worst politicians we have are also the people who are the best at that, at building a fan base, so to speak. But what I'm saying is that Gavin Newsom is obsessed with doing something, being this Trumpian populist figure that he has not exhibited faculty for, right?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, and that's what I'm saying too, is that he's confusing engagement with actual political action.
Right. And he's confusing the kind of engagement that you get on social media when it's someone else's algorithm. And a lot of the engagement is like not people who are going to vote for you or support you, but people who the algorithm is pushing your content to because it knows they'll get pissed off by it. Right.
Yes, exactly that.
I'm not against, pissing off conservatives, but that doesn't help you necessarily. Right. Like there's not a clear benefit to us in this.
Yeah, like good things piss off conservatives, but pissing off conservatives is not inherently a good or useful thing. It's just a thing.
It's not enough, right?
Yeah.
Like, it can be, sometimes that's necessary just for morale purposes alone.
Sure.
But again, I don't really think Gavin Newsom is making the right scared. I don't think he's breaking their morale. I think he's just kind of creating content that people on the left are sharing because it pisses them off. People on the right are sharing because it makes them laugh. I think they think it's sad more than anything else. Yeah. And obviously, you've got a chunk of like a decent chunk of like centrist dim types who like Newsom. And I guess maybe it's working for some of them, but I don't think it's broadening his support. I don't think there's a single voter, especially in a fucking swing state, who was like, I wasn't going to vote for Gavin Newsom until I saw him mimicking Donald Trump's tweets.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he is doing, in a sense, what Harris did, which is this consistently failed Democrat political strategy that they seem so addicted to that no amount of losing will break them of it, which is moving to the right to try and capture moderate Republicans, right? They've done this ever since Trump took the Republican Party closer and closer to fascism.
Right.
I want to give an example of this. Here's Gavin Newsom talking to Sean Ryan about transgender athletes.
I'll be candid with you. I looked at that issue and I said, boy, they're just exploiting this. It's a handful of people. What the hell is this? It's being weaponized. It was just another cultural issue. Until 2 years ago, there was a state track championship. We had a trans athlete that was successful, and there was a video of the girl that lost, and she was devastated. And that video went around everywhere. And it was very emotional. It was very real. And I remember calling my team in. I said, this is legit. And I did this podcast with Charlie Kirk. Unsurprisingly, he brought it up. And he said, tell me that's not fair. I said, it's not fair. You're right. My party was pissed. LGBTQ caucus furious with me because I don't think it's fair. It's not. But because you oppose sports doesn't make you homophobic. And my party needs to stop saying that.
Yeah. Again, I know with who he thinks this is going to help. He believes it's a religion, effectively, among a lot of establishment Dems, that there's a whole huge chunk of voters who are just itching to vote for a Democrat if they weren't in favor of all of these icky cultural issues that are hard to touch, that the right is, spends so much time harping on. And I think part of what they're seeing, and where a lot of the logical disconnect comes into effect, is that they see how much money conservatives and time and discourse conservatives spend talking about this and obsessing over it. And they believe, well, if we just kind of fold on these people, then we've taken this great weapon out of their arsenal and they'll be helpless because they're stupid. And I don't think these are fundamentally very smart people in the political sense of the world. I think they're bad politicians. Yeah. I think they're bad. I think they were good politicians in terms of a competency sense at a prior age to get to where they were. Mm-hmm. But the ground has changed, and intelligence is largely a product of adaptability, and they have not proven adaptable. And I think what's actually going to happen, because we've seen this, is if they throw trans people under the bus, as they're actively talking about doing, the right will grab another chunk of their coalition and start ruthlessly trying to destroy that group of people. And these people's suggestion will once again be, okay, well, we got to, throw those people under the bus, because then we'll deny them that weapon. And eventually you won't have any Democrats left.
They'll come after same-sex marriage. They'll come after fucking interracial marriage, and Newsom will try and find the middle.
Yeah.
Where he has received praise for this is in the legacy media. I want to quote here from a Cal Matters op-ed, which suggests that Newsom was, quote, someone trying to hold space for a hard conversation in his podcast. He's not.
You don't have conversations with Charlie Kirk. He's never had a real one in his life.
Yeah. The conversation is not hard to have, right? Trans people deserve the same fucking rights as everyone else. It's very easy to have. Also, he's having this conversation with someone who agrees with him. Mm-hmm. I would love to see him tell a young trans woman that she can't play on the fucking third string high school volleyball team, because then he's going to see a kid cry too. I don't want to go over that trans people can compete in sports. I've made my living as an athlete for much of my life. This is bullshit. And it's fundamentally disrespectful to women athletes to continue to suggest that they're biologically inferior. But I do want to talk more about Gavin Newsom's slide into meme politics. His press office claimed that after the fires in LA, they claimed this in the New York Times in a piece that I'll link, he was troubled by the misinformation that came out. This apparently was his first fucking time in encountering misinformation on the internet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, when you think about the ease with which he lies, right?
Yeah.
Absolute comfort he has bullshitting. It sort of makes sense. Until it hits him, he doesn't care because he's lying too. So they decided to take the fight to the internet, I guess. They began with Star Wars memes. And then when the redistricting debate in Texas, we've covered extensively on executive disorder, was kind of reaching its peak, Newsom sort of begun this, I know you are, you said you are, but what am I kind of tendency in his posting. He posted in all block capitals, I'm not going to shout, Donald Trump, if you do not stand down, we will be forced to lead an effort to redraw the maps in CA to offset the rigging of maps in red states. But if the other states call off their redistricting efforts, we will do the same. Thank you for your attention on this matter. Sorry, it's hard to read because it's entirely unpunctuated, apart from at the end there. These tweets aren't on his personal account or the official Governor of California one. They're on an account called Governor Newsom Press Office, but that account does have the little gray tick mark that you can get in Twitter now for government accounts. Then he moved on to AI-generated images and signing his post with initials like Trump does, claiming Kid Rock had endorsed him, which isn't true. Incidentally, they did this exactly a year after Donald Trump posted an AI-generated image of Taylor Swift with a Swifties for Trump montage, which shows how much time they spend looking at Trump's posts rather than doing anything fucking useful. Then they moved on to mocking Greg Abbott for using a wheelchair, saying he rolled over for Trump. Again, like, you do not build a political coalition by mocking people with disabilities. There are a million things to fucking hate Greg Abbott for. I could spend an hour talking about the loathsome shit that he has done. But using a wheelchair is not one of those things. If you cannot find anything else, that really shows the paucity of democratic politics right now. Let's take a break and we'll come back.
Awesome.
All right, we're back. Unfortunately, and probably predictably, Newsom has received praise from all over the legacy media for these posts. The NYT quoted, it's actually unclear if they quoted, I don't know if this was just a mistake that they haven't corrected, but it was phrased like she said it directly, but it wasn't in quotation marks, so I'm a little unclear. I'm just going to assume they quoted this lady, Sarah Roberts, a director for the Center of Critical Internet Inquiry at UCLA, said, quote, Mr. Newsom's posts are perhaps grabbing so much attention because they stand out from the rest of the Democratic Party's ineffective approach of playing it safe and proceeding as if it's business as usual. And then, just to double down on this, useful podcast idiot John Favreau tweeted, quote, I mean, it's pretty clearly a parody of Trump's absolutely insane, all caps, often nonsensical posts. Probably why all the people in my life who aren't political junkies keep reaching out to say they don't know much about Newsom but think the tweets are hilarious. Humor and mockery can be quite effective. Neither of them say what they are effective for, right? No one seems concerned that these make no material difference, and he is doing them instead of doing things that make material difference.
Right.
I'm going to play another clip from Chris Hayes here.
California Governor Gavin Newsom and his team have figured out a very entertaining way to deal with Donald Trump at his own rhetorical level. They've got a new social media strategy that is both, I got to say, pretty damn funny and I think extremely effective, mocking the president with a spot-on impression of his very weird communication style. Since Newsom jumped into the ongoing redistricting fight, his official Twitter account has been posting Trump style. Donald is finished. He is no longer hot. First the hand, so tiny. And now me, Gavin C. Newsom, have taken away his step. Many are saying we can't even do the big stairs on Air Force One anymore. Uses the little baby stairs now. Sad. Has all the Trump trademarks, all capital letters, random quotation marks, little parentheticals, complete unhinged absurdity. I thought that was a good one. I hate Kid Rock. GCN. Reference to Trump's infamous I hate Taylor Swift. Another drags the vice president into it. Not even JD Just Dance Vans can save Trump from the disastrous MAPS war he has started. Not even his eyeliner lines look as pretty as California map lines. He will fail as he always does. Sad, and I, the peacetime governor, our nation's favorite, will save America once again. Many are now calling me Gavin Christopher Columbus Newsom because of the MAPS. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Beyond the mockery of Trump's text posts, Newsom has also been posting Trump-style AI-generated images of himself, including this, I think, absolute masterpiece of Newsom deep in a moment of reflection or prayer, flanked by three MAGA icons and the laying of hands, Kid Rock, who he hates, Tucker Carlson, and the angelic spirit of the recently departed Hulk Hogan. Again, a spot-on mockery of Trump, who isn't doing any of this satirically. What has been equally hilarious has been to watch the joke just go soaring over the heads of Trump's sycophants in the media.
For the last week, Gavin Newsom, why am I giving him advice? You have to stop it with the Twitter thing. I don't know where his wife is. If I were his wife, I would say, "What? You are making a fool of yourself. Stop it. Do not let your staff tweet. And if you're doing it yourself, put the phone away and start over. And if you want, he's got a big job as governor of California, but if he wants an even bigger job, he has to be a little bit more serious."
Yes, right. Be more serious. Stop posting exactly like the president of the United States does. Newsom's account responded to that advice, quote, Dana Ding Dong Perino, never heard of her until today, is melting down because of me, Gavin C. Newsom. Fox hate that I am America's most favorite governor, ratings king, saving America. Trump has lost his step and Fox is losing it because when I type, America now wins. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Again, it is a stark reminder with someone else doing it, of how truly, utterly deranged our current president sounds whenever he communicates. And also how accustomed we've all become to this very, very weird behavior.
I know we wouldn't be talking about this if it was just bad tweets, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about it because I think it shows a fundamental inability of the DNC to meet the moment right now.
Yeah, we're talking about it because people are dying.
Yes.
And more people will die as a result of this administration's policies. Other people are being imprisoned. And like, the damage being done, to medical science, to the future of humanity, to the future of this country is tremendous and escalating. And the fact that like this is the best, a major contender for the Democratic presidential candidate in 2028 has been able to pull out so far is like terrifying. And again, obviously, no one should be reliant upon the Dems, but unfortunately, also, like, what are you going to do? What am I going to do, right? I don't have the resources of the Democratic Party. I don't have a bunch of elected leaders listening to me. Like, because of the status of our situation, individual people and small groups and towns, and, we talk about mutual aid on this show. We talk about unions. Yeah. All of these increase personal resiliency. They increase the ability of groups and of individuals within groups to be resilient, but none of that is going to stop the fucking DHS from turning into the SS, right?
Yeah.
And the Democratic Party clearly fucking isn't either, but the fact that this is what they're doing instead of effective resistance is, I mean, it's important. I wish there was more to say than we should know how badly they're failing us, right?
Yeah, like a world where a Democrat gets elected in 2028, it's getting less awful less quickly, and we should want that.
Yes.
Right? Like, I'm not one of these, like accelerationists.
No, I don't think that's going to help either. Yeah.
No, yeah, like right now, it is accelerating, and it is bad.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many obvious challenges that Democrats can make, and I want to play... Robert, have you seen this Graham Planter for Senate campaign ad?
No.
Maynard. All right, I'm going to play this for you. Like,
okay.
I think it's good as a contrast, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I love most about Maine are the people. I have never met people who are more hard scrabble, even in a place that requires you to work like 2 or 3 different jobs. We have watched this state become essentially unlivable for working class people, and it makes me deeply angry. My name is Graham Plattner, and I'm running for U.S. Senate in Maine to defeat Susan Collins. A decade of military service going overseas, farming oysters to feed my community, diving to lend a hand to other fishermen, trying to start a family. But everywhere I've gone, it seems like the fabric of what holds us together is being ripped apart by billionaires and corrupt politicians, profiting off of destroying our environment, driving our families into poverty, and crushing the middle class. I did 4 infantry tours in the Marine Corps and the Army. I'm not afraid to name an enemy, and the enemy is the oligarchy. It's the billionaires who pay for it, and the politicians who sell us out. And yeah, that means politicians like Susan Collins. I'm not fooled by this fake charade of Collins' deliberations and moderation. The difference between Susan Collins and Ted Cruz is at least Ted Cruz is honest about selling us out and not giving a damn. People know that the system is screwing them. They know it in their bones. Nobody I know around here can afford a house. Healthcare is a disaster. Hospitals are closing. We have watched all of that get ripped away from us, and everyone's just trying to keep it all together. Why can't we have universal healthcare like every other first world country? Why can't we take care of our veterans when they come home? Why are we funding endless wars and bombing children? Why are CEOs more powerful than unions? We fought 3 different wars since the last time we raised the minimum wage. I'm not pretending to have all the answers, but I know that I'm asking the right questions. When I tell people around here that I'm running for Senate, sometimes the initial reaction is, what the but when I tell them why I'm doing it, because I truly do believe that we can build a system that is going to represent working people, the #1 response has been, well, thank God somebody's going to do it. You're supposed to fight for the things you love. This is our home, and I will fight tirelessly for it, for you. It's Mainers first, in Maine, always.
I mean, that didn't seem bad.
No, it's good.
That's a solid ad. Yeah.
Yeah, like the bar is reasonably low, but like that dude hit it, I think.
I mean, yeah. Like I would say that's just outright good. Like if I were crafting an ad to run from, other than the fact that he's lived a different life, but like how he's talking about the oligarchy, how he's talking about the lack of progress on things like minimum wage and how unacceptable it is, and like how the difference between Susan Collins and Ted Cruz is that at least Ted Cruz is honest. Like, yeah, I'm on board. This guy seems like he rips.
I would vote for that dude. Like,
yeah, sure.
He might turn into a fucking Fetterman, but like,
I mean, they can all get milkshake ducked, but he's saying the right things at this point.
Yeah, it's remarkably straightforward, right? Like,
yeah,
and yet that seems to evade most Democrats.
Yeah, he's got the audio of a car ad, but I guess if it works, it works. Now, that's the thing. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the Plattner race, so I'm not sure where the polling's showing.
This video is like 2 days old. Like, he's extremely fresh.
So yeah,
I will say that visually it hangs together. Dude uses the same open cell wetsuit I do. Like, he didn't just buy all this shit. Like, didn't buy an axe and chop wood for the first time in this video.
Right,
you know?
right. He didn't do the normal weird Democrat trying to reach out to rural thing of like posing awkwardly with a shotgun.
Yeah. Like, this is a dude, and just like physically, he appears to have done some work with his hands.
Yeah, he looks like a working class guy.
Yeah. Let's compare this to like, Newsom has not done the material things that he could be doing instead of tweeting, right? Trump didn't call up the California National Guard under the Insurrection Act. He used Title 10, Section 12406 of the U.S. Code. That section states orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states. It also outlines procedures for DC, which we don't care about here. I don't see why he couldn't at least try to force the issue in ordering the guard to go home. He's pursuing a court case, but like, force the crisis because we're already in one. He has not taken a single meaningful action to stop ICE snatching people from our communities in California, nor has his attorney general taken a single meaningful action to stop individual sheriff's departments from violating SB 54. SB 54, if you're not familiar, is a California Values Act, which limits which inmates can be transferred to ICE custody and when. It doesn't oblige anyone to transfer them, but it does allow them to transfer them if certain felonies have been committed in the last 15 years. The San Diego sheriff has been accused of violating this. I'll link to a KPBS article on that, where they transferred someone who, according to the claims in the article, had a 21-year-old conviction, where, as I said before, the cutoff is 15 years. Newsom could do something about the surveillance, which is being installed all over California. These license plates readers, like the ones that San Diego has spent thousands, if not billions of dollars on, these license plate readers have had their information shared with federal agencies more than 100 times in May alone, according to Cal Matters. That is a violation of California law. Specifically, it's Senate Bill 34, which limits the sharing of license plate data. Rob Bonta issued an advisory, but again, this is resulting in our communities being harassed, right? Californians being snatched. Newsom has done nothing about that. He could stand up for unhoused people, but instead, alongside Todd Gloria, he has led the charge against them. Todd Gloria is seemingly intent on driving our city into debt to pursue carceral approach against the unhoused. Newsom posed for a photo shoot, destroying unhoused people's property. He hasn't done a single thing that puts him at any risk, right? He's presenting himself in this Sean Ryan podcast as a big risk taker because he spoke out about fucking teenage girls running.
Right.
But he hasn't put his neck on the line once for marginalized people in California or anywhere else.
Absolutely not.
I think where I want to end is I don't want you to engage with Newsom's tweets. Like, that doesn't help. He's going to mistake that for making a difference, right? Because I think for a lot of people in the legacy media, and probably Newsom and his friends, the real tragedy of what's happened in the last 8 months is that they have to see scary, nasty stuff on their telephones.
Right.
So seeing something funny on their telephone seems like an antidote because it's not their community. It's not their people. And it's not people they fundamentally give a shit about either. That, I think, is why to them this seems effective. And hopefully to you, as it does to me, it seems completely ineffective.
Yeah, I don't know how much else to say. It's nice to see guys like Plattner at least seem to be figuring it out. I've been looking into it, and there's not much polling. There's not really any polling because of how recently he announced his bid to show how well he's doing. Other than that, the video's gotten like 2.5 million views, something like that, which is good and seems to be spreading well online, but that doesn't translate electorally. What we do have electorally is that polls in Maine show that the Democratic Party is historically unpopular, including with Democrats. This is from a July survey.
Yeah.
There's a good article in PBS that's just titled, "They Roll Right Over. Many Democrats think their party is weak. AP and ORC poll finds." Oh, sorry. This is overall across U.S. adults.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, the initial article I had seemed to be saying that this was just in Maine. No, this is nationwide, right? So, I mean, I think that what Plattner has seen, the opportunity he's seen, is real. That there are a lot of people who are not at all interested in voting for a Republican, who have not been swayed to the right, who identify as Democrats, but hate the party and think it is weak, right? Like about 2 in 10 Democrats, according to this poll, described their party positively. 1 in 10 said it was empathetic and inclusive. That's terrible, right? And that shows that just what we were saying, kind of based on our gut, which is it's a bad idea to hang people out to dry because you don't think you can defend them. You think that it'll be beneficial politically to make the choice to, let them die, basically.
Yeah.
And it seems like Democrats largely are responding by saying, well, this party doesn't give a shit about us, and they are ineffective. They can't do fuck all, right?
Yeah.
And that's definitely what's happening. So, yeah, I don't know if Plattner's going to win, but I'm growing more convinced every day that there is opportunity for people who are actually willing to fight these bastards.
Yeah.
And who understand that fighting these bastards isn't just like, well, let's give them almost everything they want and hope that somehow lets us win.
Yeah. Talking of like not leaving people out to dry, for instance, talking about trans women in sports, he says it's a distraction from the things that impact Americans materially every single day. Then he said, "I'm dedicated to equality and justice for all in this country. And I think the specific topic has become such a touchstone of the media discussion because it pulls away from the conversation that needs to be happening, which is getting every American affordable healthcare." It's not the best response. It's not the worst one either. And I think he is right for most of these conservative people. They don't care about women's sports, right? They're not there when women are getting shit prize money, when women are getting shit TV time. This for them is just a culture war issue. He also called the genocide in Gaza a genocide, which is something that it's like...
I enjoyed the line about we're just killing kids with bombs.
Yeah. Like I think that he didn't mince his words about it when asked by ABC. He said he's following the lead of Israeli scholars on genocide on this issue. So yeah, like it's remarkably easy, right, to build a coalition right now of people who are fucking mad. And a lot of people voted for Donald Trump because they were sick of this same smarmy bullshit. Some of them also voted Donald Trump because they're hateful, terrible fucking people, right? Just to be super clear.
Yeah.
But like, it's so easy. And yet it seems to be evading, like you say, the presumptive nominee, this guy who for nearly a decade we have assumed will run in 2028. And I guess, fuck Gavin Newsom. I hope that he does not succeed with his presidential campaign ambitions.
Yep. All right. Well, that's, most of what I got to say about that son of a bitch.
Yep, me too.
Let's roll out.
Bye.
Bye.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
sink into affordable luxury. Anabay is the only machine-washable sofa, inside and out. With stain-resistant slip covers and a cloud-like frame duvet, everything goes right in the wash. Plus, the modular design lets you change the look of your space anytime. Visit WashableSofas.com to upgrade your home. Shop up to 60% off site-wide, with sofas starting at just $699 and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Shop now at WashableSofas.com. Offers are subject to change, and certain restrictions may apply.
Let's talk about modern home shopping. It's sort of become a fun side hobby, right? Scrolling listings at night, dreaming about kitchens you've never seen, or backyards you haven't even stepped foot in, all from the comfort of pretty much anywhere. Redfin knows a lot of people like you want to own, but are stuck in this browsing mode loop. That's where Redfin flips the script. With listings that update within minutes and tours you can book right from the Redfin app, you can see your dream home the moment it appears. Now, liking a listing is easy, but actually landing it, that's where Redfin comes in. Redfin has over 2,200 agents with local expertise. And Redfin agents close twice as many deals as other agents. That means they want to help you win, not just window shop. Redfin is built to help you go from just looking to wait, this could actually be home. So become the newest neighbor on the block. Visit redfin.com to start finding and start owning. That's redfin.com.
Flag football is exploding, and iFlag is leading the way. As the Guinness World Record holder, iFlag hosts premier flag football tournaments nationwide for boys, girls, high school girls, and adults. From first-time players to elite competitors, iFlag delivers top-level competition, unforgettable experiences, and a community built around the game. Ready to be part of it? Join the movement. Find your tournament and learn more at iflag.org. That's iflag.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to It Can Happen Here. My name is Dana Kurd, and I'm a writer, analyst, and researcher of Palestinian and Arab politics. I'm an associate professor of political science and a senior non-resident fellow at the Arab Center, Washington. I'm also occasional co-host of the Fire These Times. Today, I want to talk about the attacks on American universities and American academia, and what role Palestine plays in all of this, and maybe end on what's being done to stop it. So you may or may not have heard about the attacks on universities and academia, but given the general onslaught of disastrous news, even for those of you who have noted something is happening in higher education, may not be keeping up with the details. So let me give you a brief summary. A number of universities, including Harvard, Brown, Columbia, and UCLA, have been investigated for campus anti-Semitism related to pro-Palestine protests on those campuses over the past 2 years. From there, the Trump administration has escalated by slashing federal funding that those universities receive and forcing those universities to settle with the administration, not only monetarily, but also by implementing changes to how their universities are run. So, for example, Columbia University agreed to pay the Trump administration $220 million, punish 70 students involved in the protests in a variety of ways, including by expelling them, and they agreed to monitor and report their programs for unlawful DEI goals. That's a quote. One of the ways Columbia has agreed to monitor, as The Intercept reported in April, is by appointing a vice provost in charge of monitoring the Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African Studies Department, in particular, for, quote, balanced curricula. The faculty in that department will no longer run that department. And as the Middle East Studies Association, in a statement back in March, noted, this placing the department under administrative receivership is a, quote, fundamental abrogation of the autonomy of university governance. This comes at a time when the Trump administration has also attacked the National Science Foundation, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the National Institutes of Health. All of these are federal funding sources for the majority of research that happens at universities across disciplines, the natural sciences, social sciences, humanities. The Trump administration has also attacked foreign students and the processes by which they are able to get visas to study in the United States, which is just another way to get at a major revenue source for many universities. But why is the Trump administration doing all this? Here is Vice President J.D. Vance speaking to the National Conservatism Conference back in 2021.
We have to honestly and aggressively attack the universities in this country. Ladies and gentlemen, the universities do not pursue knowledge and truth. They pursue deceit and lies, and it's time to be honest about that fact. And we subsidize, we support, and in our own ways, all of us reinforce the power of universities to control our lives and control how we live them. So much of what drives truth and knowledge as we understand it in this country is fundamentally determined by, supported by, and reinforced by the universities in this country.
So that's Vance, before him and Trump won the election, identifying that universities are sites of power. Therefore, he argues very explicitly that conservatives must destroy these sites of power or submit them to their will. Are universities truly sites of power? The short answer is yes, for two reasons. Number one, as Vance himself identifies, universities produce knowledge, and that knowledge produced at universities drives innovation in the private sector, in tech, in health, in weapons manufacturing. Universities are a main engine of economic growth. In fact, universities are part and parcel of American global power. They are a major source of that power for the United States, whether in the students and scholars they attract, whether for the research that they produce that various arms of the American government can use, or whether for the legitimization that universities provide for certain frameworks like the free market, liberalism, etc., etc. So really, universities largely generate power for the powers that be. But sometimes, universities are also sites of power that can challenge orthodoxies. With greater inclusion of scholars and students from a variety of backgrounds, we get a diversity of thought. And because of how universities are supposed to run, in theory, as governed by faculty and as sites of free inquiry, that means sometimes, occasionally, knowledge is produced that can challenge power too. That sometimes occasional knowledge production is too much for the J.D. Vances of today's politics, though, so they're cracking down. The number two reason why universities are sites of power is because they offer a promise of social mobility. And that's generally true, too. Even the most modest regional public school in America still offers some of the highest quality of education you can get around the world. But that shot at upward social mobility that you can get with a university education is definitely getting harder and costlier and less accessible. There's this book by Marc Bousquet I highly recommend reading, titled How the University Works. In it, the author details how, as universities became more corporatized, tuition increased, university workers were disempowered, and the value of a degree plummeted. And this process started way before Trump. Clifford Ando, professor of classics and history at the University of Chicago, wrote for Compact Magazine recently on what's happening at the University of Chicago right now. For those who may be unaware, at the University of Chicago, the university is stopping PhD admissions. It's increasing enrollment numbers. It's slashing budgets. It's even proposing to teach some courses using ChatGPT. Ando argues that this current dismantling of University of Chicago that we're witnessing is again not Trump-related, but can be traced to this corporatization of the university, where universities prioritized money-making technologies and investments, and as he writes, quote, fundamentally corroded policymaking at universities. So, to get a high-quality education today at a university that isn't trying to trap you as cheap labor, or doesn't just use overworked adjuncts to teach courses to avoid paying faculty their worth, you need to either come from money, or you need to be highly, highly exceptional, or you need to accrue exorbitant amounts of debt. And yet, marginalized people still made advances in this system. We saw, for example, more African-American presidents of universities, more women. We saw diversifying scholarship, courses, pathways for students as universities became more inclusive. That's what diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts did, imperfect as they were. And even though the university as an institution continues to exploit labor, continues to exploit their own students, often doesn't deliver enough on the promise of social mobility. Even delivering a little was too much for the J.D. Vances of the world. They don't want upward social mobility for some Americans. and they don't want those challenges to power, even at the margins. So they're cracking down. The attacks on Harvard, Brown, George Washington, UCLA, the list goes on, is predicated on attacking DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Conservatives allege that universities taking a person's background into consideration in admissions, or in hiring, or in scholarships, etc., all of that violates anti-discrimination laws. And our conservative Supreme Court, in its recent ruling in the cases of Students for Fair Admissions versus University of North Carolina and Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard, agreed. They overturned the 2003 Grutter versus Bollinger case that had allowed higher education institutions to consider race in admissions. And all of this comes at a time after decades of the university as an institution eroded itself. But I would say attacking DEI wasn't effective enough, especially after the Black Lives Matter movement. Saying DEI is bad is a harder sell for an American public, 51% of which say they support Black Lives Matter. And this was according to a 2023 study by the Pew Research Center. Now, 51% isn't overwhelming, but it's not nothing either. So conservatives, to attack the university, have had to exploit the weaknesses that already exist within the academy. That has meant exploiting the way the university as an institution has become sensitive to money and endowments and donors. And that has meant exploiting the way the university has not actually been a site of free inquiry or expression for particular people and particular topics. And by exploiting and expanding that gap, they are now trying to take those freedoms away from everybody. This is where Palestine comes in. The truth is, attacks on student protesters for Palestine, attacks on scholars who work on Palestine or speak on Palestine, that all started before Trump. And that has become the blueprint for attacking universities and academic freedom generally. They're using the pro-Palestine protests, pro-Palestine programming, or just any knowledge production about Palestine as an excuse to allege anti-Semitism, enter into these investigations, and demand the universities do what they want. After the Hamas October 7th attacks, we saw student protesters detained, like Mahmoud Khalil at Columbia and Rumaiza Ozturk at Tufts, and many more. We have seen diplomas withheld, like what Virginia Commonwealth University attempted to do to many students, including student Sirin Haddad. We have seen professors put on leave or fired, like what Muhlenberg College did to Maura Finkelstein. The list goes on and on. But again, a lot of this pattern started before Trump. In a November 2023 poll conducted by political scientists Mark Lynch and Shibli Tilhami, called the Middle East Scholar Barometer, the results show that 66% of faculty members who study the Middle East, quote, self-censor when speaking about the Middle East in an academic or professional setting. And that number goes up to 77.4% when talking about Israel-Palestine. On the Israeli-Palestinian issue in particular, almost 52% of scholars have concerns about pressure from external advocacy groups. And of those who said they self-censor, a full 83% said the issue they most feel the need to censor themselves about is anything related to criticism of Israel. This is a crazy number if you consider that of the same group, only 1.6% of respondents said they censored criticism of U.S. policy. And a full 98% of assistant professors, untenured professors, who work on the Middle East, quote, feel the need to self-censor when speaking about the Palestinian-Israeli issue in an academic or professional capacity. Part of this story, the censorship story, is the large-scale adoption of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. Back during his first term, President Trump's executive order on combating anti-Semitism directed government bodies to take the IRA definition into consideration when enforcing Title VI, which is a part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. The Biden administration didn't overturn any of that either. They implemented that executive order themselves throughout their tenure. And this definition is one definition of anti-Semitism that critics say conflates criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. In fact, the main drafter of the IRA definition, Ken Stern, has expressed concerns that this definition is being used as a, quote, blunt instrument to label anyone an anti-Semite. And it's for that reason that Human Rights Watch and 104 other organizations signed a letter urging the UN not to use this IRA definition as a result. There are, of course, a number of competing definitions of anti-Semitism, such as the Jerusalem Declaration on Anti-Semitism, that has a more nuanced understanding of when criticism of Israel becomes anti-Semitism. As their website notes, the Jerusalem Declaration is a product of an initiative that originated in Jerusalem and includes in their numbers international scholars working in anti-Semitism studies and related fields, including Jewish, Holocaust, Israel, Palestine, and Middle East studies. But of course, the IRA definition is the one that the Trump administration wants to follow and the one that universities are adopting. Maybe it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. It's not because this administration that engages with the far right and propagates conspiracy theories like the Great Replacement. It's not like they actually care about anti-Semitism. It's just a tool, as Jewish organizations working to combat anti-Semitism, such as the Nexus Project, explicitly point out. It's a way to, quote, weaponize anti-Semitism by attacking free speech, DEI, foreign students. And in this environment, we can understand why there's so much fear to speak up and so much self-censorship. You can be falsely accused of anti-Semitism for bringing up Palestine as a topic of discussion, for trying to study what's happening, for trying to produce any sort of knowledge on what's going on. I also really want to underscore that this self-censorship and fear that already existed in a space in academia is a worsening trend today, but it definitely existed before October 7th too. Take it from me as someone who studies Palestine in American academia, Palestinian scholars have long been under attack in the American Academy. But after October 7th, and before Trump, this of course got worse. External actors and donors got involved in campus governance, as we saw in Harvard and many other places. University administrations cracked down on students, professors, everyone, often preemptively doing the work of the right wing, because they thought that taking away freedoms from some groups wouldn't come back to bite them. And this is how Palestine is now one of the cudgels that Trump is using to attack universities and the academy. And it's an effective cudgel because some liberals in universities and outside universities can also be persuaded to attack scholarship on Palestine and students who speak on Palestine. But those exceptions to academic freedom that have long existed in the academy are now being used to attack everyone. A quick note here to outline what academic freedom for a faculty member actually means. As the American Association of University Professors, the AAUP, notes on their website, academic freedom has these main elements. Number 1, the freedom to discuss relevant matters in the classroom. Number 2, the freedom to explore all avenues of scholarship, research, and creative expression and to publish the results of such work. Number 3, intramural speech, freedom from institutional censorship or discipline when addressing matters of institutional policy or action. And number 4, extramural speech, freedom from institutional censorship or discipline when speaking or writing as citizens. So faculty members are allowed to speak on matters as citizens. Being a faculty member and being a member of the university community does not take away their right to be citizens. That last one is worth emphasizing. To maintain universities as sites of free inquiry and knowledge production, there has to be academic freedom. And that freedom includes teaching, research, intramural speech, and extramural speech. You can't censor people you don't like or don't agree with and think your institution and your university will continue to function. You certainly can't do that and think the right wing won't sniff it out and use it against you. So what's to be done? Things are happening. People are fighting back. And just like Palestine has been the canary in the coal mine for so many things, including the assault on American academia, Palestine may be one of those crucial issues that helps academics and students and faculty to organize in this moment. For example, because of the arrests of pro-Palestine students and their attempted deportation, the American Association of University Professors, alongside the Middle East Studies Association and the Knight First Amendment Institute, sued the Trump administration over this policy of arresting and threatening deportation for lawful speech on Palestine. The AAUP is also now a plaintiff in a number of cases challenging the Trump administration on attacks on DEI, attempting to abolish the Department of Education, cuts in federal funding of research, etc. And attacks on students and faculty after October 7th, which set off this whole barrage of attacks on universities since then, have galvanized people to demand their university administrations uphold academic freedom. In 2024, nearly 40 chapters of the AAUP were founded or reestablished across the U.S. Even professors who don't teach or study the Middle East or Palestine are starting to speak out about the dangers of these moments and these trends. I think people are starting to realize that American universities will have to uphold their ideals of faculty governance, free inquiry, free thought for everyone, or they really will cease to exist. That's all I have for you today. I'll be back soon to talk more about the latest developments in Palestine. Stay strong, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Tired of spills and stains on your sofa? Wash away your worries with Anabay. Anabay is the only machine washable sofa inside and out, where designer quality meets budget-friendly prices. That's right, sofas start at just $699. Enjoy a no-risk experience with pet-friendly, stain-resistant, and changeable slip covers made with performance fabric. Experience cloud-like comfort with high-resilience foam that's hypoallergenic and never needs fluffing. The sturdy steel frame ensures longevity, and the modular pieces can be rearranged anytime. Shop WashableSofas.com for up to 60% off site-wide, backed by a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. If you're not absolutely in love, send it back for a full refund. No return shipping or restocking fees. Every penny back. Upgrade now at WashableSofas.com. Offers are subject to change, and certain restrictions may apply.
Let's talk about modern home shopping. It's sort of become a fun side hobby, right? Scrolling listings at night, dreaming about kitchens you've never seen, or backyards you haven't even stepped foot in, all from the comfort of pretty much anywhere. Redfin knows a lot of people like you want to own, but are stuck in this browsing mode loop. That's where Redfin flips the script. With listings that update within minutes and tours you can book right from the Redfin app, you can see your dream home the moment it appears. Now, liking a listing is easy, but actually landing it, that's where Redfin comes in. Redfin has over 2,200 agents with local expertise. And Redfin agents close twice as many deals as other agents. That means they want to help you win, not just window shop. Redfin is built to help you go from just looking to wait, this could actually be home. So become the newest neighbor on the block. Visit redfin.com to start finding and start owning. That's redfin.com.
Flag football is exploding, and iFlag is leading the way. As the Guinness World Record holder, iFlag hosts premier flag football tournaments nationwide for boys, girls, high school girls, and adults. From first-time players to elite competitors, iFlag delivers top-level competition, unforgettable experiences, and a community built around the game. Ready to be part of it? Join the movement. Find your tournament and learn more at iflag.org. That's iflag.org.
Welcome to It Could Happen Here, a podcast about things falling apart and also sometimes about how not to put them back together and how to fail to put them back together. I am your host, Mia Wong, And today we are going to be talking about the place where the anti-trans crusade began, North Carolina, and about the recent spate of anti-trans bills that have been passed there. And with me to talk about this is David Forbes, an editor and journalist with the Trans News Network and the Asheville Blade. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I think some people, if you're listening to this show, you may remember that North Carolina is the state that passed the first bathroom bills. But what has gotten significantly less attention is A, everything that happened after that, and B, a series of two really sweeping and hideous anti-trans bills that have been passed in the last month or so. And David wrote a really, really good piece for Trans News Network about both these bills and also how Democrats in the state helped pass them. So I want to talk about that. And I guess the place to start is, can you talk about what these two bills, HB 805 and SB 442, got started?
Sure. So of the two, HB 805 is the more sweeping, broadly at least. They're both terrible. Anti-trans bill. It affects everything from changing your birth certificate to state health plans not covering trans health care to really ominously what jail or prison you get put into if you're a trans person and you're arrested.
Yeah.
That one, it's kind of a laundry list of, far-right anti-trans ideas. The other SB 442 is one of those where it takes some digging. And here I'm really thankful that TNN's policy analyst, who I think y'all have had on here a few times, Corinne Green,
friend of the show,
was actually there to... Yes, was a huge help in reviewing this bill.
Yeah.
I've been covering North Carolina politics and its various horrors for a long time, but even still, it's good to have legislative expertise on that. And SB 442 changes the definition of child abuse to not include transphobic child abuse, essentially. It was written against the very fictional specter of if you have questions about this trans stuff and you get your kids' pronouns wrong, DSS could come snatch them overnight, which is not a thing that has ever happened.
No.
Including and especially North Carolina. Yeah. So, but what it does is just bluntly open the way, especially in the state foster care system, for just anti-trans bigotry across the board.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, it's okay, well, placement can't be denied based on someone's religion or their race and being a transphobe.
Yeah.
It's that's being added to the list of protected identities. It's also essentially laying the groundwork for just even more legal sanctioning of conversion therapy, which is, of course, torture and abuse.
Yeah.
I think Corinne summed up as that if you don't have a trans kid to abuse, foster care will provide one for you.
Yeah.
It's really bleak.
Yeah.
We chuckle, but we chuckle and it's gallows humor because it's that absurd.
Yeah.
So SB 442 was the one that kind of went through the whole legislative process first. And in some ways it had less of a party line treatment than HB 805 eventually did. So, I won't say credit where due, but NC Senate Democrats, of whom there aren't terribly many, but there are some, did universally vote against this bill. They were no, we're not approving it. However, the GOP has a 2/3 majority in there, so it's really not as necessary. They can potentially override a veto in there. Where things really came down to was North Carolina House. And there, 9 Democrats joined with the Republicans to pass this. And then it got to the desk of Governor Josh Stein, who won in a landslide last year. North Carolina Democrats, despite how gerrymandered the state is, which we'll talk about more in a little bit, actually did pretty well. The GOP no longer had a supermajority in the House, and the Democratic candidate for governor, former Attorney General Josh Stein, won in a rout. So ostensibly that was supposed to prevent bills like this from becoming law.
Yeah.
Because, okay, if the Dems held the line in the North Carolina House, the Republicans no longer supermajority, then the governor vetoes it, then they can't override the veto. That didn't happen. So not only did 9 Democrats side with Republicans, Stein signed the bill.
Yeah, which is hideous.
Yeah. And it was bleakly insulting the way he did it too, because it was just he didn't even issue a statement or, well, we still believe in trans rights, this is a bureaucratic thing, or even bother to make an excuse. It was just tucked in a list of bills that he signed that day, alongside like some other bureaucratic stuff involving like retirement communities and recognizing driver's licenses. So it's definitely kind of insult to injury sort of situation. Interestingly, North Carolina's gay Inc. organizations are kind of like the mainline nonprofits. And in North Carolina, there's like Equality NC, there's the Campaign for Southern Equality, which is regional, but is based in the state here in Asheville. They actually had been very strongly against this bill, despite some Democrats supporting it. But they stopped short, as will become a theme, with condemning or attacking any of the Democrats who did, which was a giant signal that this is not an issue you're really going to fight Democrats on. So the governor then thinks, well, there's no political capital to be lost signing this thing. On the same day, he did veto HB 805, along with a bunch of other bills targeting, in quote marks, DEI measures, which are basically just attempts to smash out anything that's not far right and further resegregate the state. And he did veto those. The language he used, though, was definitely what a lot of us have become used to. It's this was divisive. No trans people mentioned, no trans healthcare mentioned, no trans rights mentioned, just vaguely, well, this is divisive and it's a distraction. So HB 805 does actually go back to the legislature. And one Democrat had voted for HB 805. So there was a tension turning of, okay, is this guy going to still vote for a veto override? Representative Dante Pittman, because it's a big deal, supposedly anyway, for a Democrat to defy their own governor. It's one thing when it's like you're just, okay, the bill's going to pass. It's still horrible, but it's supposedly a harder bar to reach, or at least that's what various, ostensibly pro-queer Democrats are telling us, for them to go on the record and be like, no, I'm joining with the other party to override your veto and like give you the middle finger, essentially. But what happened when he got back to the House, he actually did vote to hold with the veto. But another representative had been out on a pretty dubious excused absence when HB 805 was originally there. Democratic Rep Nassif Majid voted in favor.
Yeah.
And that was enough to make it law. So the one thing that among queer and trans in North Carolina, who like a lot of other places, voted very heavily against the Republicans, for the Democratic candidates and all. It's one reason they did fairly well last year. To stop exactly this sort of legislation becoming law, it just became law, and it did so thanks to members of the Democratic Party and, in one bill, the Democratic governor.
Both of these bills are unbelievably draconian. Like, these are things that even 2 years ago, banning state funding for all trans healthcare.
For the state health plan, we should specify.
Yeah, sorry. It is the state health care, but, and this is at least my understanding of it, is that this is a ban on all ages.
Yes, for anyone on the state health care plan. So if someone is a state employee or a teacher.
Yeah, or your kids are.
Exactly. And this kind of actually, it's close to home for me because I grew up poor in North Carolina. And one of the only reasons we had health care growing up was because my mom, as poorly paid as she was a public school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a trans kid in where I was now, where we know, it's easier for trans kids to know who they are. It's not quite as erased as it was back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Can't get health care. A trans adult who's a teacher can't have their health care covered anymore.
And that's a thing that 2 years ago, Ron DeSantis wasn't calling for this.
No.
Right? The Daily Wire at that point, 2 years ago, is explicitly calling for trans exterminationist things, but they're not specifically proposing adults can't use trans healthcare. That's not a thing. That was even on the table. And now you have a Democrat overriding their own governor's veto to get this through.
Yes. A Democrat in a solidly blue district. Majid's district is in the middle of Charlotte, which for folks who may not be as familiar with the state, Charlotte's the largest city here. And it is not known for being at least on voting wise, it doesn't go for the GOP generally.
Yeah, and then this is the same point that I want to make about this bill, redefining what child abuse is. Even by the standards of sort of far-right anti-trans bills, those are really weird and radical.
Karine said it was one of the worst that she'd seen in the country, as far as on the childcare front.
From my covering of this too, this is one of the worst things I've ever seen. And the Democratic Party passed it.
Passed with 9 Democrats in favor, and the governor signed it. Yeah.
That's unbelievably horrifying.
Yeah.
And the fact that the queer orgs in the state were unwilling to condemn the Democrats who passed this. is just horrifying.
It is. And actually goes one further than that, because afterwards, they didn't even bother to put out perfunctory, oh, we're disappointed in Governor Stein. We will continue to try to fight this legislation in court or something like that. They did nothing.
Yeah.
They went silent. So, and, their condemnations of SB 442, especially before this bill passed, they were all correct.
Mm-hmm.
It is horrible.
Yeah.
It does sanction child abuse.
Yeah.
It is horrific on every single front. It is a catastrophe. It is draconian, all that. It didn't stop being so when Democrats started supporting it.
Yeah.
The kids hurt by this, families hurt by this, aren't going to be any less hurt because a Democrat signed on to it.
Yeah. And before we go to break, the thing I want to sort of close this section with is that, like, I think it's a very, very common thing to focus on, like, okay, why are you focusing on the Democrats right now when the Republicans are doing all of this stuff? And this is a case where very explicitly, and this is the dynamic I think you've seen across the board with, for example, like Chuck Schumer, like helping to get the Republican budget through, right?
Yes.
The stuff the Republicans are doing, a lot of it can't be implemented without the support of the Democrats. And the Democrats have been willing to support the fascist government implementing this stuff. And that makes them a collaborationist party.
Yes.
In a lot of extremely important cases. And when that happens, and North Carolina is one of the places at the forefront, and it has been at the forefront for like a decade.
For nearly a decade.
For nearly a decade. It's like 8 years, 7, 8 years.
9.
9?
As of this year, it's 9 years since HB2
Good
came
Lord.
along in the spring of 2016.
2016, yeah. Oh, that is, yeah. Okay, see, this is, do not go to sleep at 5 a.m. and then try to do math live on air. It will come for you too. Really, truly, was trying to subtract 16 from 20. Okay, this is your one moment of levity and a bunch of extremely bleak shit is me trying and failing to do math on air. Look, I can drive. That's my thing. I'm sticking to it. But what we are seeing here is the way in which, like, resistance to the GOP, and this is a place, like, North Carolina is a state where in the midst of a just unbelievable national right-wing turn, right, queer people turned out to stop this.
Yeah.
And their reward for their resistance was the people that they had put in charge of defending them in as staggering of an example of the banality of evil as I've ever seen, just signed this horrific piece of anti-trans legislation that couldn't have been passed without them into effect in the same thing as, like, fucking, as a bunch of regulatory bullshit.
Yeah. And then Gay Inc. did nothing.
Yeah.
The groups they're supposed to lobby at the political level, this is the point of their existence. Yeah. Did nothing.
Yeah.
At that point. They let it go, on to the next fundraising cycle, on to the next AI meme on your page to boost, content generation or whatever. And here we are.
And we are back. Now, for the brevity of this show, I am not going to go into my giant rant about how this is what happened with Mitterrand and the French socialists and how Mitterrand and the Socialist Party instituted neoliberalism in France. But, we are, instead of doing that, or me going on another rant about the absorption of social movements by the NIS in Bolivia, or another rant about the 17 different iterations of this that we've seen over the years. See my episodes on Lula, see many things I've done. We're going to go back and talk about this in the context of North Carolina, because I think there's a very important thread that, David, you have been pulling on in this piece and in general that is really not well understood anywhere, that is about the structure and function of the Democratic Party in the South, and the way that North Carolina has functioned as it's sort of like the moderate human face of like the Greensboro massacre.
Oh my, yeah, and this is one of those where to start thing. There's a quote that I have in the piece by civil rights historian Timothy Tyson that, since I read it, I think over a decade ago, really just kind of hit me like a hammer, and is kind of simple. A lot of the experience I've seen as a impoverished trans woman living in North Carolina and covering local, state government, and how federal government works on the ground here too. Like, beneath the green ivy of civility stood a stone wall of coercion.
Yeah.
And that is one of the better summaries. And it applies to other circumstances too, but it just perfectly sums up kind of the historical reality of the North Carolina Democratic Party. And when Tyson was doing that, he was tracing this whole history from the 1898 Wilmington coup d'etat and massacre, which is one of the most decisive events in American history, and I'd even say in like the history of the rise of fascism too, to the current day. He was writing in the late 90s. And it's part of a project of historians, and one of the terms they were using was North Carolina has this progressive mystique.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you were having governors on their southern states during the civil rights era where, giving angry speeches from courthouses and things like that. And North Carolina was trying to be the moderate example of the South. Oh, we put money into, look at all these schools and roads we're building, this college system we're building. We just built Research Triangle Park. We're attracting, it's the too busy to hate kind of myth. And on that note, they generally were more careful about repression, but it still happened. North Carolina doesn't make the headlines in some way that like Selma did, for example. But there was a history of riots and a brutal attempts at repression from the 40s all the way to the 70s.
Yep.
In North Carolina. And they happened like in almost every major city there is here, and some that weren't so major.
That's the thing that I've talked about a little bit on the show with the Holy Week uprising and the sort of the whole wave of riots kind of culminating in the assassination of Martin Luther King. But statistically, most of the riots that happened in that entire period happened in these small and mid-sized cities that have just like the historical memory of which has just been completely fucking buried.
Yeah.
And North Carolina, as you're saying, like is one of the critical sites of this.
Yeah. Durham was rioting in the 40s.
Yeah.
Like that's how far back it goes. And I think a lot of the time people think, oh, well, not much happened in this era. And I think it's just a lack of knowledge of history, especially radical history. Did it not happen, or was it suppressed and then erased?
Yeah.
And that happened with a lot of this. So you had, and figures like Governor Terry Sanford at the time, who was, famous North Carolina Democrat. And if the Klan was like openly marching to murder people, he might say like, okay, look, a massacre is bad news. We are going to like put the state troopers out to deter them from doing that. But a lot of civil rights activists end up dead.
Yeah.
Or there's like violent crackdowns, during the Greensboro particularly was a site of both of some really well organized like civil rights efforts and sit-ins and more radical action too, but also a lot of repression. By 1979, when the state's boosters are portraying, all that upheaval is a thing of the past, this anti-racist march or anti-Klan march specifically organized by this communist group in Greensboro was massacred. The Klan and neo-Nazis came in, they just opened fire on people. Largely, they were acquitted later.
Yeah.
And in ensuing years, a lot of investigations have been done into this, and various levels of local and state and after the fact federal law enforcement were very complicit in things ranging from just kind of trying to sweep it under the rug to outright, especially on the local level, like cooperating with the Klan.
Yeah.
A lot of them were either aware this was going on and did nothing to stop it, or even actively fed the Klan information.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book recently called Morningside that goes into a lot of this detail that I'd encourage folks to take a look at. But like that's the reality of North Carolina, and that's the reality beneath the progressive mystique. And one of the historians I quote in the piece mentioned that this is an exquisite instrument of social control.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've kind of already framed the discussion as, oh, it's just this genteel civil thing. We'll hear you out. Just be a little more patient. But if stuff ever really escalates, there is the option of just flat out smears of violence and massacre. And knowing the history of North Carolina, a lot of this was directed at Black North Carolinians.
Mm-hmm.
But also it was used to crush labor stuff. A lot of the people killed in the Greensboro massacre were also organizing in the textile mills.
Yep.
And North Carolina, under the Democrats, under their moderate period, had and continues to have some of the most draconian anti-labor laws in the country, which takes some work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the reality of North Carolina and of the Democratic Party here. And they lean on that mystique heavily. And honestly, I think a lot of it is what they evoke as, we're the defenders of the sane, sensible, civil status quo.
Mm-hmm.
You even saw it in some of Stein's statements about HB 805 when he did veto it. It's like, well, this is divisive. It's making too many waves.
Yeah.
We need to get back to business, which they mean not just the business of government. They literally mean business, as far as marketing the state and making more money, and inevitably means making more money for the gentry. So that's kind of the reality of North Carolina beneath this kind of, how things supposedly are better and more progressive here, in the end of the day, you can still get massacred.
Yeah. And I think on a sort of structural level, right, I think there's going to be people who are being like, well, okay, why the fuck do I give a shit about North Carolina? And this is something that you point out in the piece, something that's really obvious if you spend literally any time in the South, is that I think it's 36% of the South is like, what's the actual number? I should have looked this up before.
So of the national population of queer and trans people, 36% live in the South, which is far more than any other region, like by a wide margin.
Yeah.
I think under that same 2023 calculation, and there was another recent survey that came out specifically about trans people. All of these have faults.
Yeah.
It is a general rule that trans people, especially in areas where they are more legally and violently marginalized, are wildly undercounted.
Yep.
But it maps to about the same numbers. I think of trans people in the country, the estimated population, about 33 to 36% live in the South. And in the 2023 one, the next highest amount live in the Midwest, which is kind of different from how you see things portrayed, that, we're just this
coastal, like
these, elite bohemians on a few coastal cities. Yeah. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of trans people in the South and the Midwest.
Yeah. We've
been here for ages. We're still here. Yeah.
Yeah. It's North Carolina. It's Texas. It's fucking New Orleans.
West Virginia, Florida,
Yeah. And again, like in terms of like, okay, so I'm not in those places, like we all have a responsibility to all queer people, like as queer people, right? Like we have a responsibility to each other, and we should fucking fight for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And B, you can look at what happened in North Carolina, and it was deliberately, this is the place where the right wing's anti-trans strategy was born, and it was exported from the success that they had in North Carolina to the entire rest of the fucking country.
Yes.
Right? With the bathroom bills, and this is something we're going to get into in a second, with the way the Democratic Party didn't react to those bathroom bills. The last point that I want to make here is that this strategy of control is also very similar to the one that the Democrats use in places like San Francisco, where you have this sort of progressive veneer over, the constellation. Well, I guess the constellation of class forces is getting more similar as big tech moves into like that part of the South. But, it's this constellation of like, oh, hey, we are the queer rights party, but our actual interests are this combination of housing developers, landlords, and tech giants. And so as a method of social control, we're going to do this like, hey, we're extremely pro-trans stuff, and then we're going to throw a whole bunch of fucking trans homeless people into concentration camps.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that, I'm going to talk more about this on the show another time with the ways that Trump's anti-homeless executive orders, some of the models for it are the way that sweeps have been working in places like Oakland. We've talked about this on the show before. But this mechanism of social control is one that's really, really widespread. And the South operates as a laboratory for that too, in the same way that it operates as a laboratory for the right.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because this is a point I can't hone this point enough and make it sharp enough. Frankly, folks need to take it really seriously.
Yeah.
Whether you call the South or not, fascists do, the far right does, and they have for a long, long time viewed it not as a place to ignore, but as a place to consolidate power and try out their tactics.
Yeah.
Too often the left, even the queer left, has not.
Yeah.
We have all suffered for it.
Yeah, and this is the whole thing for the historical left, right? Like one of the things that broke the American labor movement, was the defeat of the CIO in the South.
Yeah.
I mean, all the way back to, Vince, you were literally talking about the defeat of Reconstruction. Like this is why this country is like this, and if you don't want the country to be like this, you have to fucking fight in the South.
Yes.
That's all we've got time for today, but tomorrow we will be back to talk about the long and sordid history of the Democratic Party's progressive veneer in North Carolina and what truly lies beneath it. And we will look at how the original response to the 2016 bathroom bills set the stage for both the Democratic Party in North Carolina's passing of anti-trans laws today and the future of the rest of the country.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Tired of spills and stains on your sofa? Wash away your worries with Anabay. Anabay is the only machine washable sofa inside and out, where designer quality meets budget-friendly prices. That's right, sofas start at just $699. Enjoy a no-risk experience with pet-friendly, stain-resistant, and changeable slip covers made with performance fabric. Experience cloud-like comfort with high-resilience foam that's hypoallergenic and never needs fluffing. The sturdy steel frame ensures longevity, and the modular pieces can be rearranged anytime. Shop WashableSofas.com for up to 60% off site-wide, backed by a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. If you're not absolutely in love, send it back for a full refund. No return shipping or restocking fees. Every penny back. Upgrade now at WashableSofas.com. Offers are subject to change, and certain restrictions may apply.
Let's talk about modern home shopping. It's sort of become a fun side hobby, right? Scrolling listings at night, dreaming about kitchens you've never seen, or backyards you haven't even stepped foot in, all from the comfort of pretty much anywhere. Redfin knows a lot of people like you want to own, but are stuck in this browsing mode loop. That's where Redfin flips the script. With listings that update within minutes and tours you can book right from the Redfin app, you can see your dream home the moment it appears. Now, liking a listing is easy, but actually landing it, that's where Redfin comes in. Redfin has over 2,200 agents with local expertise. And Redfin agents close twice as many deals as other agents. That means they want to help you win, not just window shop. Redfin is built to help you go from just looking to wait, this could actually be home. So become the newest neighbor on the block. Visit redfin.com to start finding and start owning. That's redfin.com.
Flag football is exploding, and iFlag is leading the way. As the Guinness World Record holder, iFlag hosts premier flag football tournaments nationwide for boys, girls, high school girls, and adults. From first-time players to elite competitors, iFlag delivers top-level competition, unforgettable experiences, and a community built around the game. Ready to be part of it? Join the movement. Find your tournament and learn more at iflag.org. That's iflag.org.
Welcome to It Could Happen Here, a podcast about things falling apart, and also sometimes about how claiming that you were going to put things back together and then not doing it makes things fall apart even worse. I am your host, Mia Wong, and today we're going to be continuing with part 2 of my interview with David Forbes, an editor and journalist for the Trans News Network and the Asheville Blade, about the history of the North Carolina Democratic Party's progressive veneer over their agreement with Republican policies, and importantly, how the Democratic Party's original response to the anti-trans bathroom bills from 2016 paved the way for where we are today. So enjoy. Let's talk about the original bathroom bills, because I think there's some knowledge. Well, okay, I don't know. It's been almost a decade.
Yeah.
So I think people may have forgotten how this all started. So let's talk about the first bathroom bills, what happened, and then how the Democrats kind of ensured that they would stay in place.
Sure. So there is the big one everyone knows about is HB2, because it became kind of internationally famous as the North Carolina bathroom bill.
Yeah.
And even I think for folks whose memories may have faded, it has come up recently as kind of a benchmark and often a misinterpreted one, as we're about to get into, for how far things have shifted. Because on paper, it looks like this really horribly backfired. And in some ways it did initially. HB2 was a bill that was kind of slapped in last minute. It clearly drew from the larger anti-trans far-right policy circles, which North Carolina Republicans are highly connected to. North Carolina Dems often kind of view themselves their own little like institution, like we're the Democratic moderates, like North Carolina Democrats have always been at their best. People of that tradition we just talked about. The Republicans here were like, okay, we're now in power, which they were starting in 2011. Let's try out this stuff from ALEC. Let's try out this stuff from some obscure right-wing think tank. And that meant they were plugged in when, in the wake of Obergefell and also North Carolina as well, the year before, you'd had equal marriage for that whole swath of the South was kind of imposed by a federal court order or recognized by a federal court order. So they were like, okay, this isn't working. There is not just more de jure, there is more de facto on the ground popular acceptance of equal marriage now. That's not the wedge it was previously. So what do we shift to? Well, we shift to trans people. And so North Carolina legislators very eager to try out far-right policies. The North Carolina GOP is far-right even by Southern standards, which is interesting because the state's very split as far as like votes and demographics go. So 2016's rolled around. 4 years earlier, the Dems had done the usual thing. They'd run a super conservative, super pro-business white guy Democrat. He got trounced by Pat McCrory, who was the former mayor of Charlotte, and ran as like, oh, I'm a moderate, sensible Republican. I'm going to bounce out the legislature a little bit. But unlike too many outside the region and the state who kind of wrote, okay, well, North Carolina is just becoming this red state now, like other southern states have, they knew their hold was actually really precarious. Now, they gerrymandered extensively. So extensively that, like, North Carolina, the same year as HB2 passed, stopped being recognized as a democracy by the like policymakers that study it. As a matter of fact, the District of Carolina, they did a whole commentary later that year that these were the most rigged districts, the most gerrymandered districts they'd seen, not just in the US, but anywhere in the world. So that is where we live. That's where we've lived for some time. And but the governor's elected statewide, so he's in a more precarious position. And they wanted a wedge issue, in their view, to drive out conservative votes. They also hate trans people and want to hurt us. So this HB2 said that trans people can't go into bathrooms unless they use the one matching their birth certificate in any state building in North Carolina. And this technically also includes like local government buildings. It includes like social services. It includes like any educational setting, pretty much. So this was clearly a slapdash affair. They didn't even have like an enforcement mechanism in there. But it did a few other things too, I think people forget about, which is it also stripped the ability of localities to make their own minimum wage rules. So it was also an attack on labor because those always go together. And not unrelated, trans and queer people are overwhelmingly working class demographics, which I don't think gets said enough. And also, essentially, this was in reaction to Charlotte adding gender identity to its existing non-discrimination ordinance. There was a local one. But in reality, if Charlotte had never done that, they would have done a bill like this pretty shortly anyway. It was kind of just the excuse. And they also struck down all non-discrimination ordinances across the state, like local non-discrimination ordinances. So this is a broad attack with trans people as kind of the point of the spear, as it were, like the ones most in the front lines. It's a familiar pattern. Go after trans rights, you're also going after broad rights for any marginalized group because non-discrimination stuff is being struck down left and right. And also you're attacking labor. So, it really kind of set the model for things to come. HB2 sparks a massive international backlash. I think the end estimate was 400 million. The state lost 400 million as companies pulled out, events pulled out. There was a boycott, a fairly effective one, honestly, that was started as grassroots, though gay ink groups and even like just random nonprofits and some Democratic Party officials later joined in on it. So the money's being hemorrhaged left and right. McCrory's being turned into a national laughingstock. If anything, it's proving a rallying point for the other side because 2016 rolls around and in a year where Trump takes North Carolina and generally the Republicans do fairly well throughout the South, even in swing states like NC, McCrory loses. He loses to the Attorney General, Roy Cooper, as a Democrat. Now, I would never say he's pro-trans. We're about to get some major betrayals he did. He was more willing to say at least perfunctory statements about trans rights than any North Carolina Democratic politician at a statewide level before, and honestly since, including the current governor. And yeah, he proceeded to win. So he gets in office. North Carolina gentry are historically plenty fine with bigotry. But the Republicans had, by this point, broken one of their cardinal rules, which was they fucked with the money.
Yeah.
Because, like, the state was losing money. They were losing business deals, corporate headquarters and stuff. And this is a lot of what the status quo, the very anti-labor status quo that North Carolina Democrats and Republicans had generally both supported in varying ways, was in danger. And, some of them personally were losing money. So they basically tell the Republicans in early 2017 to knock it off. Like, okay, you've gone far enough. It didn't work. You lost the election. They still do the gerrymandering, had a lot of power in the state legislature, but they didn't have the governor's office anymore. So, repeal this. Like, we're getting too much bad publicity. And what really escalated it was basketball was kind of a religion in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Especially college basketball. And the NCAA said, look, we'll pull the tournament out if HB2 is still in the books. And at that point, there became like these back and forth sessions. Earlier in December, there was this compromise effort where supposedly Charlotte would strike its non-discrimination stuff on its end. It was currently like the source of legal challenge. They'd gone to court to fight to uphold it. And this should have been a warning sign. The governor-elect Cooper at that point brokered kind of this deal where, okay, Charlotte, you take trans people out of your non-discrimination ordinance out of your own accord, and the state will repeal HB2. Well, that didn't happen. They did the first part, and then the legislators were like, okay, well, that's nice. We're not doing anything about this. That should have been a lesson about complying in advance, but it didn't really seem to take, sadly. So HB2 was still in the books by March. March Madness is coming up and all that. And so they finally do a repeal. And this is still hailed as, oh, look, like back in the day, like even some Republicans would like repeal a trans bill when it got this big backlash. Their federal funding was being threatened as well for the state. That's not like federal education funding and all. That's not what happened, though. And what happened, I think, was a lot more ominous and a lot more revealing. What passed instead was, honestly, a second bathroom bill called HB 142 or HB 2.0, as a lot of activists and queer folks on the ground, trans on the ground, dubbed it. And what this bill did was it technically took out the bathroom ban, but it's put in a bunch of Byzantine provisions about who could use the bathroom when, so it would still take a court case for a trans woman to go use the women's bathroom. It kept all the anti-labor stuff, and it kept all the non-discrimination stuff struck down for years. Like, you couldn't pass local non-discrimination protections for years. And at this point, the pressure is mounting. The Democratic Party, for the first time in most of a decade, their votes in the legislature actually matter, because the Republicans are split between kind of the capitalists who are hate trans, who were using this as a wedge issue, and now the money's being fucked with. They're ready to repeal it. And some of the others were like, no, we really are dedicated to hating trans people. The state can burn as long as trans people's lives are made more miserable. So they didn't have the votes in their own caucus to pass this. So for once, Dems had a lot of power. And they could have easily been like, no, full repeal or nothing. And they probably would have gotten it through. They did not. They sided with the Republicans. They passed this mess that essentially kept the status quo. It was just barely enough for the NCAA, who even noted they were corporation based, so they noted it was reluctant that they were, putting the tournament back in NC, but they did. The new governor, Democratic governor, signed it. And I probably forgot to mention earlier, HB2 passed with 2 Democratic votes in the first place.
Yeah.
So this is like not a new trend of this happening. Heck, anti-queer stuff, even well before that, would often pass with Democratic support as well as Republican support, often be signed by Democratic governors. So this is not an entirely new thing. And this is also a point where you can see Gay Inc. splitting a bit, because Gay Inc. had actually condemned HB 2.0. But once it became passed, they either offered tepid statements or they backed down. And so the lesson from HB 2 wasn't, okay, back in the day, 9 years ago, trans rights used to be more of a consensus, even among like moderate conservatives, at least basic protections for it. And a good example was how unpopular HB2 was, and it was repealed under all this backlash it did get a backlash.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really repealed. And as a matter of fact, what the far right learned was that when it comes down to it, the Democrats, North Carolina, it turned out elsewhere, will fold if trans rights is made an issue.
Yeah, and and you can watch everything that has happened since with trans rights has just been the Democrats folding over and over and over again and getting weaker and weaker language until we're in this place now. And I think the thing that is a little bit different is that you used to have to claim you had done something about the anti-trans bill, and now you can just sign it.
Yeah.
And it becomes law. And this is something that has played out across the country. There have been a lot of states where Democratic governors have signed anti-trans bills.
Yes. Or vetoed pro-trans bills, like in California.
Yeah. And, even in states where Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, has been being held up as the big pro-trans people. And I see even trans leftists doing this. And there are a lot of things in Illinois that are very good for trans people because of the weird Pritzker corruption. His sister is trans. And also, the moment the government was oh, hey, we're going to sort of make a big show of threatening healthcare funding, Pritzker just folded and let all these hospitals stop providing trans care to youth, even though it is literally a violation of Illinois, of Illinois anti-discrimination legislation.
Yeah.
They just backed down and refused to do it.
Yeah.
And the way that this starts is that there is a gap between the rhetoric of someone like Pritzker being oh, no, we support trans rights. Trans rights are an important civil rights issue. And then you watch them allow a bunch of hospitals in Illinois to stop providing care to trans kids. And the place where that ends is more and more Democrats just straight up voting for this stuff.
Yeah.
And the Democrats, as you're talking about with HB 2 is there were Democratic votes on that one.
Yeah, HB 142 especially. Yeah, the compromise bill.
Yeah.
But even HB 2 itself, yeah, there were Democrats who supported that too.
Yeah, and so this is I think the critical part of this is that this stuff only can happen with the support of the Democrats, and that's why it's happening. It's because and this is something that's incredibly important right now. Where all of the shit that is happening. All the things Republicans are doing are hideously unpopular. 30% approval ratings across the board for all of this. Just hideously hated. The only way it can happen is if the Democrats go collaborationists and side with the Republicans, and that's what they're doing.
Nazis always need Quislings.
Yeah, and they're relying on the image of resistance to distract everyone from the fact that they're helping these policies go through. And if you want to stop them, you have to stop them from collaborating.
I think that also brings up kind of the third element in this. You've got the are always fascist, increasingly fascist Republican Party. You've got the increasing collaborationist Democratic Party. And especially on queer and trans rights, you have Gay Inc., which, and I go into some examples in the piece, after HB 2.0, they put out some perfunctory statements, but then they turned to gatekeeping. And the ensuing years, they very consistently tried to stifle any activism that was more radical or more principled to try to get this stuff off the books.
Yeah.
And especially if it came to holding Democratic officials' feet to the fire. I literally have an example in the article that I was physically there for and witnessed, where a director of the Campus on Equality seized the mic as it was being passed to some candidates to answer a stronger question from some trans activists and changed the question to something that didn't actually put any pressure on them at all. Just kind of absurd, petty stuff like that. But the cumulative effect has been that they turn to thinking about their political careers and their fundraising. And when push comes to shove, again and again, they've shown they won't hold Democrats' feet to the fire. If anything, they will tell the trans people trying to hold their feet to the fire to shut up. So if that the lobby, the official lobby that's supposed to, ostensibly on some level stand up for some mild version of trans and queer rights, will never give someone any shit for breaking ranks, not even we condemn official so-and-so and their bigotry or whatever, or we are sorely disappointed in, or any one of the boilerplate things. They won't even go that far. That's too far for them.
Yeah.
So you have Democrats collaborating and a Gay Inc. structure that has taken the energy and funding out of a lot of other queer activism, but absolutely will not fight when Democrats are involved. So if you're fascist, all you have to do is get some Democrats involved.
Yeah, and that's how you give Vichy France. Like that's
yeah, and honestly, it's a question I put to folks because look, I'm honestly dealing with the North Carolina Democrats was one of the things that made me an anarchist. So
yeah,
so it's I've not had any faith in them for a very, very long time. But for folks that kind of do put a little more energy into electoral processes, I just some questions of the piece that I think are worth asking them, like, what's the point of people who are just going to support your enemies?
Yeah.
What's the point of people that you elect, maybe even like get out, and knock doors or whatever to get elected, who then don't do the one thing they're elected to do? And I'd ask too for some of the folks who support some of these gay ink orgs. I was like, if they won't fight now, what is the point of them?
Yeah.
Why do they deserve any support from us as a community? Or is it far past time to look to other alternatives? There was another lesson HB2 taught as well, which is, if you want even the most diehard bigot to start losing their nerve, you attack their money and their power.
Yeah.
And then you don't stop. If folks say, oh, you have to compromise with a pragmatic solution, you ignore them, laugh in their faces, do whatever, but you keep pressing them. Because that was the other thing, HB2, there was a really effective campaign to boycott.
Yeah.
And it did have a substantial effect. The lovely weapon of vicious mockery really came in handy. And even the Republicans didn't like becoming a national laughingstock. So there were lists about how stuff could be fought as well. And the more radical history of North Carolina, there are queer radicals here. My city was hit by a massive hurricane last year. And honestly, it was a lot of us radicals getting out on the ground that kept things from getting even worse. And, and just folks on the ground pitching in outside of government structures, not waiting for the official nonprofits who were either devastated or had not planned for this. So there are other alternatives, or heck, that the hell, I have to remember I can curse here. The fact that civil rights reform had a lot of attention has gone to sit-ins. And there was a lot of organizing in those movements. It's a lot more militant than folks remember. That also went along 3 decades of riots in cities throughout the state before the old order even began to budge a little bit.
Yep.
And the lesson from that, North Carolina Democrats and North Carolina status quo, and I'd say throughout the South and throughout the country, it only budges or even starts to move when the cost of continuing the way it is become far too high.
Yeah. And our job is to impose that cost.
Yes.
Because if we don't impose that cost, they're going to keep pushing and they're going to continue to write us out of existence until they have the guns to do it.
Yeah. And honestly, that is a mentality I think a lot more people need to absorb. And I think one of the lessons from, fighting the far right at some points for my entire adult life, basically, and even a little bit before then in North Carolina, is that the more you fight them, the weaker they are.
Yeah.
But also, and this is something one of the more experienced transfer lines in the South I know has emphasized, you won't always win. You can always inflict a cost.
Yeah.
And I think a little more like thinking outside of elections, a little more bloody-minded determination can really come in handy, of the sense of if our enemies are okay, court rules against us, we're still pressing the attack. Okay, election goes against us, we're still pressing the attack. I think we can do way meaner and way better than they do on that front.
Yep.
Something goes against us, that's nice, we're still pressing the attack. There's nothing in this hellscape of an empire we have to abide by, especially not in the South.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if something doesn't go our way once, okay, learn, regroup, redouble, make sure you inflicted some costs, go out and inflict more of them. They're not invincible. Trust me.
Yeah. Another gender is possible. You just have to go out and fight for
exactly.
it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think on that note, David, where can people find your work?
You can find my stuff for Trans News Network at transnews.network, including this most recent piece. And you can find some of my local reporting as part of the Asheville Blade Co-op at ashevilleblade.com.
Awesome. And y'all at both the Trans News Network and the Asheville Blade have been doing a bunch of absolutely incredible work.
Thank you.
And I encourage everyone to support both, because ideally the function of journalism is to be the targeting mechanism of the class. And these are two groups of working class trans journalists who do it.
And both organizations are worker run, I should add.
Yep. This has been It Could Happen Here. Go fight them.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Tired of spills and stains on your sofa? Wash away your worries with Anabay. Anabay is the only machine washable sofa inside and out, where designer quality meets budget-friendly prices. That's right, sofas start at just $699. Enjoy a no-risk experience with pet-friendly, stain-resistant, and changeable slip covers made with performance fabric. Experience cloud-like comfort with high-resilience foam that's hypoallergenic and never needs fluffing. The sturdy steel frame ensures longevity, and the modular pieces can be rearranged anytime. Shop WashableSofas.com for up to 60% off site-wide, backed by a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. If you're not absolutely in love, send it back for a full refund. No return shipping or restocking fees. Every penny back. Upgrade now at WashableSofas.com. Offers are subject to change, and certain restrictions may apply.
Let's talk about modern home shopping. It's sort of become a fun side hobby, right? Scrolling listings at night, dreaming about kitchens you've never seen, or backyards you haven't even stepped foot in, all from the comfort of pretty much anywhere. Redfin knows a lot of people like you want to own, but are stuck in this browsing mode loop. That's where Redfin flips the script. With listings that update within minutes and tours you can book right from the Redfin app, you can see your dream home the moment it appears. Now, liking a listing is easy, but actually landing it, that's where Redfin comes in. Redfin has over 2,200 agents with local expertise. And Redfin agents close twice as many deals as other agents. That means they want to help you win, not just window shop. Redfin is built to help you go from just looking to wait, this could actually be home. So become the newest neighbor on the block. Visit redfin.com to start finding and start owning. That's redfin.com.
Flag football is exploding, and iFlag is leading the way. As the Guinness World Record holder, iFlag hosts premier flag football tournaments nationwide for boys, girls, high school girls, and adults. From first-time players to elite competitors, iFlag delivers top-level competition, unforgettable experiences, and a community built around the game. Ready to be part of it? Join the movement. Find your tournament and learn more at iflag.org. That's iflag.org.
This is It Could Happen Here, Executive Disorder, our weekly newscast covering what's happening in the White House, the crumbling world, what it means for you. I'm Garrison Davis. This episode, I'm joined by Mia Wong and Robert Evans. We're covering the week of August 21st to August 27th.
Yeah.
We sure are.
I can't believe Cracker Barrel would do that. It's outrageous.
Yeah, that's clearly the biggest news.
Thankfully, they switched it back. They took the cracker out of the barrel, and thankfully, though, they reversed course.
And put the cracker back in.
I really don't understand how it's woke. I mean, I do understand, because I understand how this messaging works, but...
It doesn't matter. Anytime anything happens and they can see a backlash forming, you, after the fact, because people were starting to get pissed off about the fucking Cracker Barrel thing. In the same way, like that happened with fucking Games Workshop earlier this year. Like they redid their logo in a shitty way. And it's the same like minimalist bullshit.
Yeah, it's just everyone's doing it. It's not woke.
Yeah.
It's just incentivizing like capitalist conformity. This is why they've changed all of the buildings of like, you know, McDonald's and Pizza Hut to the same structure so you can use the property and resell it over and over and over again without having to do big renovations. It's just all about capitalist efficiency. It's not about woke.
It's got nothing to do with woke. But there's people whose whole, like Chris Rufo, whose whole job is sitting around. And as soon as you started to see the backlash forming and realize like, oh, there's probably going to be a spree of these companies coming in with these new minimalist logos because it's clearly a trend in like consultancies, right? Like it started happening. This is not the first one. So I'm just going to look around until I see one of these that feels like it's got culture war potential. And Cracker Barrel's an obvious one. Like if I was looking out there, that's one I would pick, right? Like
I think they're also responding to like, you know, the past few years where we've been removing like racist characters from logos, right? With like Aunt Jemima's and like Land O'Lakes and using this in a similar way, except they took away the white guys leaning against the barrel.
Yeah.
So it's part of that whole backlash as well. It's funny though. I have seen like I don't know if it's from Chris Rufo, but you know, people similar in that orbit talking about how this thing actually is wokeism because minimalism is based on brutalism, which was invented by communists. So actually turning everything into this minimalist design is actually a plot from the Frankfurt School. And the communists are taking over.
I mean, look, it doesn't matter outside of the fact that people, whenever you buy into it, like you're helping to feed, like if you like even dunking on them, that's part of like the problem is that like just talking about this shit at all fuels the feedback loop, right? And that's what this is a feedback loop that they're very good at manipulating for political purposes. And I'm not going to sit here and lecture you and say like, stop commenting on this, stop talking about this stuff. But we do need to understand that this is the olds in the audience will remember the old Simpsons Halloween episode where the different like mascots from different companies like come alive and start murdering people in town. And the solution that's an old ad man gives everyone is like, well, if you want to stop the monsters, just look away. Advertising feeds on attention, you know? And once everyone ignores the monsters, they go away. And unfortunately, that's not how things actually work because there's 350 million people in the country. And so whatever you choose to do about this isn't going to matter. But the feedback loop is going to continue unabated. That much I can say.
Cracker Barrel has fallen and like Christ, after 3 days, has rose again.
Yeah, great. Anyway, speaking of memes, unfortunately, we should talk about this horrible mass shooting. That is probably going to be the big story this week. I mean, I hate to reduce it to that, but yeah.
We're recording this on Wednesday, a few hours after the shooting.
Yeah.
This is in Minneapolis.
Yes, there was a mass shooting at a Minneapolis Catholic school, Annunciation Catholic School. This happened earlier the day that we're recording this, so that's going to be Wednesday, August 27th. As of right now, at about 2:11 p.m. PST, 2 children are dead, 17 people, mostly children, are wounded. The shooter is also dead, and the shooter has been identified as Robin Westman, who graduated from the school in 2017.
Their mom also worked at the school until very recently.
Yep. And that's not at all an unusual kind of situation. Mass shooters at schools often are either attending the school or recently graduated. There's been a couple of cases where a family member worked at the school. Like, this stuff is all pretty standard for somebody shooting up a school. What's different is, one of the things that's different is that the shooter basically followed in Brenton Tarrant, the Christchurch shooter's footsteps, by covering their firearms and the gear that they were wearing in I guess drew or painted on. I'm not sure.
It looks like with like a white paint pen,
like white out or something like that, a white paint pen, and covered it in the names of other mass shooters, references to racial annihilation memes like the Remove Kebab meme, which is in short a meme celebrating the Bosnian genocide. And it was a meme that was specifically Brenton Tarrant had signaled in his like manifesto, and I think on his gun he had a Remove Kebab reference. But it's something he signaled, and it was on the shooter's firearm as well as the names. I mean, Tarrant, there's references to Tarrant on there. Timothy McVeigh, Tim McVeigh's name, just the word McVeigh is painted on there.
Ted Kaczynski,
the Unabomber.
A whole bunch of other more recent mass shooters, people who are in like the mass shooter fandom.
Yeah.
As well as just a collection of memes from like old memes too.
Utterly unrelated to shooting. Like, there's a loss meme on there. And if you're, a lot of people are going, wait, what the fuck, really?
Yeah.
And if you're too young for loss, there used to be I think there still is, a webcomic called Control-Alt-Delete that started in like the early 2000s. It might have gotten started in the late 90s. And it was part of like this, there's this boom in webcomics in the late 90s when suddenly people are able to make their own comics online and make livings off of them. A whole bunch of guys made gaming comics after Penny Arcade, which was like the big one that blew up. And one of them was Tim Buckley, who did a comic called Control-Alt-Delete that was not good. And he tried to have a serious storyline where his character's girlfriend has a miscarriage. And the strip in which he finds her having a miscarriage is called Loss. And it's gotten to the point where people are abstracting the 4 panels into like a minimalist line representation of how the blocking looked. Like it's a bit. People have done everything, like put Lost memes on everything. Like that's the joke at this point, more than a reference to the show, is like, look at this new crazy place somebody put a Lost meme. And so
yeah, it's a game.
And a lot of what we're seeing with the shooter is like, oh, this is the natural extent of a bunch of things. And a fucking mass shooter putting a Lost meme on the barrel or on the side of their gun before shooting up a school is the natural, furthest, craziest extent of the Lost meme, right?
If this is anything, it is like a mimetic shooting. It is based on a whole bunch of memes about other mass shootings as well, specifically in the way that engages in like anti-Semitism and racism and includes slurs and catchphrases. It's not in the way that the shooter actually believes these things ideologically. It is just to gesture to them as they exist in the lineage of other mass shootings. It is like it's a perfunctory use of slurs and of messaging that just kind of wraps around this whole like nihilistic fandom culture around other mass shooters. And like that's what this shooting is. I've watched now like 17 minutes of video of the shooter like showing off their weapons, going through their like diaries and journals, inspired by a whole bunch of like Eastern European mass shooters as well. And this shooter reminds me of participants of what's called the true crime community, or TCC, not as in like the genre of true crime podcasts or documentaries, but it's more of an online fandom based on a personal obsession with mass killers themselves, and specifically school shooters. And this community encourages reenactments and tries to get some people to do their own mass shootings.
Yeah.
And this is not the first one of these we've had in this past year.
No.
The shooting in Wisconsin last December by Samantha Rupnow, which we reported on It Could Happen Here, was also in this like variant of like Columbiner true crime community shootings. Rupnow's name is on one of this shooter's rifles.
Yes.
There was a shooting in Tennessee a few months later, which also referenced Rupnow, done by a black white supremacist incel whose manifesto was full of like plagiarized memes and other manifestos. It's about this like this complete lack of meaning. Like they scattershot all of these memes and references and like bits of manifestos and like images to make this whole like mess of stuff to look at, but none of it actually like means anything.
Well, and the draining of meaning, the flattening of meaning is part of the point.
That's the point.
Is taking a man who shot fucking 50 people to death and turning that into the same thing as a 20-year-old joke about a comic strip in terms of its impact and severity. Because if that's no more serious or meaningful or painful than fucking a joke about Tim Buckley's dumbass cartoon, like once you get someone in a mind state where they accept that, they're willing to accept a lot of terrible things, right? And the goal here is creating content in the form of mass shootings, right?
Yeah.
Like that is the goal. And that is also what people are consciously, a lot of people want to be a part of themselves. You mentioned the last year's shooting that committed by Samantha Rupnow, but there's also, I found a December 30th, 2024 article in Wisconsin Public Radio, WPR.org, their website. It talks about Rupnow, but it also gives the story of 13-year-old Jamie Seitz, who killed herself in 2024 and was a member of the true crime community. The police went through her phone and they found a bunch of memes and reference and like her contributing to online discussions and telegrams and stuff for TCC. She was obsessed with the Columbine kids, right? She like engaged in a lot of those conversations, and she was posting about her plan to kill herself, but she was not interested in carrying out like a mass shooting or killing other people. And that fit in fine within the discourse. Like people encouraged 100%. Her, basically, right? Like, I think part of the thrill here is just wanting to feel like you sitting on your ass on the computer, you are impacting the world, in part because like you feel like that's the only chunk of the world that you've got, right? Like, and that's, tied into like the hopelessness and the nihilism of all of this. I found a just random poster on Reddit in a discussion of the TCC community Like, I actually really like this person's summary of it. And this is like 7 years old. Interestingly enough, it's not a new phenomenon. It dates back to interwar period Germany. There were many Germans at the time who were fascinated with the topic of extremely grisly murder and torture, especially such instances where sexual arousal was involved. The German language even has a word for it, Lustmord or lust murder. Serial killers were on the rise at the time, and many of them claimed to get extreme amounts of carnal pleasure from the act of killing or maiming. And there is this weird vein. I found another study as I was looking into this that uses the true crime community term. It's from 2015 by Naomi Barnes of Utah State University. And it was like looking into fandoms that had grown up around serial killers and around spree killers online. And Naomi is using the word true crime community for just a general term of people who are interested in true crime, not in the way that you and I have been using it.
Yeah, because we're using this term to refer to like a specific fandom around around these shootings, not the general milieu of like true crime podcasts and like documentaries and people who are into that sort of content. We're referring to a much more niche group of people online who operate on like Telegram, Discord, Tumblr, and other social media accounts.
Right.
It's based around like specifically like an obsession over actually doing these acts and like and like they like cosplay as these people. This isn't like your average white woman who likes listening to true crime podcasts. This is something very different.
No, and that's important, but it's also important to note that like what you've been talking about, this need to recreate, and not just prior to actually carrying out a shooting, because most of them don't ever do that. There's this obsession with the aesthetics to want to own clothing and objects and whatnot that like look like Erica Dillon or whatever, right?
The Columbine band shirt.
Yeah, right. This does extend to the shootings. Like there's a number of shooters who have like worn that KMFDM shirt because one of the Columbine guys wore it.
Samantha Ruppnow, and I believe this recent shooter also had a KMDF shirt picked out.
And what's interesting about that 2015 study is that it is looking at the true crime community, because Columbiners were already a thing. There'd been a number of copycat attacks, but the kind of social fandom around like that aspect of it had not really taken hold at a mass level in a way that the internet and virality could really make use of.
It evolved on Tumblr in that era.
Yes.
It's more like an infant compared to like the fully grown version that it is now.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is this paper kind of catches the community as it's starting to calve off. And so there's a chunk of the paper where she's quoting from a couple of different people who went and visited. In one case, they visited like Adam Lanza's house and the Sandy Hook Elementary School. And it's people visiting places like that, sites associated with like mass shootings and the like. And she gives this mix of people being like, oh, like the first person she quotes who went to Lanza's house is like, I was actually just really sad and I just wish none of it had ever taken place. Like it was all really horrible and it made me feel bad. But then a bit later, she gives you responses from people who have the opposite reaction. Like there's this fella, Paul, who does not specify which murder site they visited, but specified that it was a place where a murder victim's body was found. And Paul responded, honestly, I felt ecstatic. Like, wow, I'm going to a place someone was killed. What if there are ghosts? The murderer, him or herself? I was absolutely off my kid. We dug up some dirt and we keep it in a little glass bottle.
It's like a religious pilgrimage.
Right. And that's the ecstatic. And that's what this starts to document. And that's where I'm like, oh, this study is mostly about an unrelated, just a normal fandom, but you can see the bits like already popping up in 2015. These people who are having these ecstatic, almost like psychosexual experiences being at the site of a mass shooting.
Yeah. And the further extension then is then doing one yourself. And obviously this also is like a part of like a suicidal drive, a suicidal intention. A lot of these people kill themselves in the course of the act.
Right.
It's a way of making your suicide not just be about yourself.
Right. And there's more to say about like the culture of fame in this country and like how virality and whatnot has made it so that like these people tend to get what they want, or at least they know they've got a good chance of getting what they want, right? They're obviously not around to experience it, but like as long as you do something sufficiently like weird and bloody, you're likely to get a good amount of attention for a while.
So that's the actual like background of what this shooting was. I think now we should probably mention how the shooting's being talked about more broadly.
Yeah.
Because it takes a very different angle from the actual like nihilistic like TCC fandom aspect. It is making this more about like woke contemporary politics, I suppose.
Yeah.
Kash Patel has announced that he's investigating this as an anti-Catholic hate crime.
Yeah.
Which is just not true.
I mean, it's almost certainly by a Catholic or somebody who was raised Catholic. Yeah. All the people who hate Catholics most are often lapsed Catholics.
Very early on, people started claiming that this shooter was trans. Now, a few years ago, they did change their name to Robin, and the name change petition stated that at the time, they identified as female. At this point, we still know very little about the actual shooter beyond like the videos they posted on YouTube of their weapons and a journal written in Cyrillic and a note that they left to their parents discussing their fear of dying of cancer due to vaping. I've not been able to look at their internet presence or activities in the intervening years since changing their name, and their current gender identity is still not very clear. In a translation of their Cyrillic journal, they discussed detransition. Quote, "I don't want to dress girly all the time, but I guess sometimes I really like it. I know I am not a woman, but I definitely don't feel like a man. I regret being trans. I wish I was a girl. I just know I cannot achieve that body with the technology we have today. I also can't afford that. I only keep my long hair because it is pretty much my last shred of being trans. I'm tired of being trans. I wish I never brainwashed myself. I can't cut my hair now as it would be an embarrassing defeat, and it might be a concerning change of character that could get me reported. It just always gets in my way. I will probably chop it on the day of the attack." Unquote. Now, discussion of gender takes up a very small percentage of the journal. Most of their writing is about admiration for previous mass shooters and fantasizing about killing children from a very young age. On the cover of their journal, alongside a bunch of other like gun stickers, they do have a Defend Equality Progress flag sticker with an AK-47.
Yep.
From my perspective, this is just another one of those memes that they're wrapping into everything.
Yes.
On one of their magazines, they wrote, "I am the Wokler, why so queerious?"
Right.
And the other side of the magazine had an anti-queer slur. So I view this type of stuff in the same way I view the inclusion of like the Lost meme or like Ted Kaczynski or all this other stuff, this like memeified version of trying to throw everything at the wall just to make everything mean nothing.
Right.
And it's extremely like obnoxious and annoying.
But it works.
But it works. And I don't know what else I want to say on this, on like the trans angle.
We don't want to deny that like this is going to cause a problem, that this is going to be used by the right. Like there will certainly be rhetoric, and I've already seen rhetoric from, Jack Posobiec and that crowd around it about
trans people targeting Catholics.
Well, this is why these people shouldn't have weapons or whatever, or like this is why we should put them all in. And I'm not going to minimize that. That didn't start with this, that kind of rhetoric, that conversation, and this is useful to that crowd. And that is bad. We don't know what's going to happen or to what extent this is like. We're talking right now that they clearly would like to use this and are trying to use this. One thing that I would point out, and I don't know if this is certainly not an on balance optimistic thing, but making Americans focus on a mass shooting for more than a day or two, not as easy as it used to be.
No, yeah. Which is really devastating.
It's not good that we're there, but like 2 people dead, I'm just saying, like Americans ignore way bigger numbers all the time. Now the right, there's not always a media campaign like there's going to be with this beyond trying to make this huge, but also they've done that before, right? They did that with the Rupnow shooting, right? Like there were attempts to make that and it didn't.
Every mass shooting,
right,
they have tried to paint as being done by a trans person. And I think in some ways that has depowered this rhetoric as a tactic.
Yeah.
By claiming every shooter is trans. Most Republicans already believe that to be the case. So whether this person either was trans or used to be trans, it may not matter that much to the right because they already think every shooter is trans. Like
right.
Trump's already targeting queer people. The right doesn't need an excuse to go after queer people. I don't think an event like this will make the hammer come down much harder. This could be a boy who cried wolf situation for the anti-trans right, since their base already thinks that every mass shooter from the past 3 years is trans. I did a whole episode on this last year called Fake Trans Terrorists. The Gun Violence Archive says that there have been 286 mass shootings in the United States so far in 2025. If 1 or 2 trans people do a mass shooting, that would still mean trans people, at 1% of the population, are less likely to do a shooting compared to cis people. There was like one legitimate trans mass shooting targeting a school a few years ago in Nashville. And if this happens to be the second, I don't think that this new brain rot, Columbine, true crime community shooting will make much of an impact on trans people nationwide. Think of how quick conservatives moved on from the Zizians. And certainly, being trans is not a motivating factor of this shooting, if you look at their writing and videos posted on YouTube before they did this. This nihilistic meme maximalism has no trans causation. It has nothing to do with being trans. There's no coherent or ideological leftist screed. There's no pronoun pins. Their journal talks both about, quote unquote, hating fascism and inequality, while also hating Jews, Arabs, Mexicans, Indians, calling Somalis subhuman and criminal, writing that, quote, white people should rule the world, unquote, but that minorities should, quote unquote, have rights. While talking about ideological Nazi killers, they remarked, quote, I don't often find myself aligning with these killers' specific ideologies, unquote. They said that they disliked racism, but also were racist. They wrote about killing, quote unquote, fags, while also calling themselves one on one of their weapons. This shooter and all the memes and rhetoric they use is most similar to the Repnow shooting last December in Wisconsin in terms of the neo-Columbiner school shooter obsession, as well as the white supremacist memetic black incel shooting in Enoch, Tennessee last January. All these shootings are heavily referential, contradictory, and intentionally incoherent.
Right.
Every single extremist political faction is represented there because that is the point, is combining all of these references to previous mass shootings. So they're incorporating everything they can and things that they just think are funny, like just a whole bunch of like meaningless memes.
Yep.
And that's vastly more important than whatever gender identity the shooter happens to have right now at this point in 2025.
All right. Well, anyway, folks, there's going to be a lot of people going the sky is falling over what this is going to mean for people and how this is going to be used. And obviously, this is terrible. I'm not telling you not to feel terrible about a mass shooting.
You should feel bad about the actual mass shooting.
You should feel bad about the mass shooting. The sky, I mean, the sky's been falling, right?
Yeah.
Let's give this one a little bit to see if it makes the sky fall any faster, or if in a week we're like, no, the sky's still falling at about the same rate, which isn't good. It's just what happens. It's where we are. All right, ads. And we're back.
We can safely leave the brain rot in the previous section and now talk about something totally real, the economy.
Yes, the economy, which never kills people.
Okay, so speaking of things that have never killed anyone, that's so not true. The Volcker shot killed so many people, but a very, very critical Rubicon was crossed on Monday of this week when Trump attempted to fire a member of the Federal Reserve Board, Lisa Cook. Now, Lisa Cook is refusing to step down under the fairly obvious justification that the president does not have the power to do this. Trump has been cooking a very weird thing, accusing her of mortgage fraud as a way to remove her from the Federal Reserve Board. But Trump does not have the power to do this, so we are in the midst, effectively, of a confrontation over this, where Lisa Cook has continued to just not actually leave her position at the Federal Reserve and is going to court. This is an extremely significant escalation of what up until this point had largely been a series of attacks on the Federal Reserve's governor, Jerome Powell. There are a few factors here. One of the most important things is Trump's anger over continuing high interest rates, or sort of high interest rates. Trump wants to slash interest rates because he thinks this will make the economy grow more. Now, when I said this was the crossing of the Rubicon, what this is this is the beginning of the fight over whether the Federal Reserve is going to be an independent entity, right? Trump has been attempting to, as we've talked about on this show, appoint Stephen Miran as another one of the governors on the Federal Reserve's board. Miran very explicitly wants to eliminate the independence of the Federal Reserve. We're going to talk about exactly what that means in a second, but I want to read this quote from Fortune magazine's report on it, describing a JP Morgan analysis of the situation, because this has really spooked a bunch of major financial institutions for very obvious reasons. Quote, in a note on Friday, JP Morgan analysts led by chief economist Bruce Kassman highlighted key proposals, such as giving at-will power to the president to fire Fed board members and Fed bank presidents, giving Congress control of the Fed's operating budget, and shifting the Fed's regulatory responsibility over banks and markets to the Treasury. So this is what Stephen Miran has been proposing. This is what looks to be the long-term plan of Trump and the people around him. Eliminating the Federal Reserve is a long time goal of the far right for a extremely convoluted variety of reasons. The Fed, in and of itself, is an extremely confusing entity. Its creation has spawned a full century of academic arguments about what the state even is, and it's complicated to describe, also because most of the information, well, not most, but a significant portion of the information about it is just anti-Semitic conspiracy, because this is eliminating the Federal Reserve and the return to quote-unquote sound money is one of the key elements of a massive network of sort of right-wing, very old right-wing conspiracy theories. But I think that the thing that's best understood by people kind of is just about the Federal Reserve is the Fed printer meme, and the Federal Reserve is the body that creates money, that is authorized to create the US dollar. That is why it's the Federal Reserve Bank. It is critical on a level that is difficult to express to the entire functioning of the world economy. Now, the Federal Reserve Board is technically a government entity, but it was set up explicitly to be quote-unquote non-political. Now, the extent to which that's true is fuzzy, obviously, but the point of it was so that there would be a large-scale financial institution that controls the money supply effectively, that controls enormous portions of U.S. sort of macroeconomics policy through its control of interest rates, would not be able to be directly interfered with by the president or Congress. That is the whole point of this. It is effectively a measure to instill confidence that the U.S. isn't going to just turn the printers on and print a bunch of money from every other capitalist in the world.
Yeah, and so much, when that promise goes away, what happens? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and this is something that I think is not understood very well, right? The current conflict is largely over Trump wanting to be able to control the Federal Reserve's interest rates, right? So he wants to lower federal interest rates to make it cheaper to borrow money, because he thinks this will pump more money back into the economy and this will make the economy grow. And he thinks that he's being sabotaged by the Fed. The Fed's worried about inflation. But I actually think that focusing just on that part of the Federal Reserve is significantly underestimating how important the Federal Reserve is to the entire structure of the economy. There are so many just sort of random things that it does that are not particularly well understood. I was talking about this earlier in a meeting, but a significant portion of the gold held by countries around the world is literally just kept in a vault under the New York Federal Reserve building. And that's just a sort of seemingly random thing that it does. I was reading about its payment system for reasons that I'll talk about in the episode due about this next week. It just, in a footnote about the payment system, there is a part where it says that the Federal Reserve runs the payment system for the World Bank. So this is something that is a critical, and extremely complicated center of the entire capitalist world, right? Its payment infrastructure has trillions of dollars a year moving through it. If this infrastructure stops working or breaks a little bit, a lot of the very subtle management of the economy that the Federal Reserve does can stop working. And, we've been talking mostly about interest rates and its ability to sort of print money. which is oversimplification. But, for example, the Fed also does these things like carries out these like massive overnight repo agreements, like inject liquidity into the market. There's all of these massive, we are talking billions and billions of dollars of financial interventions that you basically never even hear about that have been stabilizing the economy since 2008. And this apparatus, if it is dismantled, if it is directly seized control of by Trump, and part of what's going on with this board is that Trump is trying to get a majority of the people on the board of governors of the Federal Reserve to be his appointment so that he can control it directly. And so they can start bringing it directly under the control of, the president, effectively, right? This is something where if you unleash the Doge people on the Federal Reserve and the payment systems, the settlement and clearance systems stop working, we are talking about a catastrophe that it's unclear to me whether it's even been modeled. There are so many different complicated things that this institution does that these people do not understand particularly well at all and think that they can use to just sort of permanently create a bubble economy that they can ride. And this is the first sort of shot over the bow isn't even the right word. This is the first engagement over the fight for that. There's also been a lot of sort of taco analysis of this, arguing that this is actually Trump backing down from trying to fire Jerome Powell. He just tried to fire one of the reserve board members. That's not backing down. There's also a chance that if this works, he's going to try to fire Powell too. So we're gonna keep watching the situation. I'm going to talk more about it next week when we know more, and also talk about what the Federal Reserve is as an institution. And we're going to continue monitoring the situation because it is extremely important. And handing the keys over to these people is something that is dangerous enough that it is creating significant pushback among the actual people in finance and in the banking system who matter.
Great. Well,
it's so good.
We'll see if this means anything other than more suffering for, people. I guess that's where I am. Is there even a level of fucking with the money that Trump can do that's enough to seriously cause consequences for him? And there must be, but it's just hard to imagine.
If there was, it's this.
Yeah. We'll see. That's the fun thing with the big stories we've got this week is they're all like, well, could get a lot worse, could just stay as bad as it is right now. Well, we'll continue to wait to see what's going to happen with all of that. Speaking of something that we don't have to just wait and wonder what's going to go on because the news changes every single week, here's the tariff song.
Oh boy, so in yet another instance of the whole Trump backing down thing not happening, the tariffs on India that Trump had been threatening for the purchases of Russian oil have in fact taken effect. The tariff rate on India is now 50%. This is a significant barrier to any trade between India and the US. It is, again, sort of unclear whether India is going to bow to the political pressure here because as with many of these tariffs, we've talked about the situation with Brazil fairly extensively on this show. The thing about imposing tariffs on a country to get them to fall in line with American policy is that it pisses off everyone in the country, regardless of whether or not they would traditionally be U.S. allies. And so there's, it creates a massive countervailing pressure against the financial incentive to fall in line and stop buying Russian oil. I also very briefly want to talk about something that I think is sort of part and parcel of the tariff policy that, Garrison, you had mentioned wanted to talk about, which is like the U.S. purchasing 10% of Intel.
Yes, socialism has been achieved. We did it.
Uh-huh.
Now you can finally call Trump a national socialist.
That's right.
Yeah, and this is sort of a intensification, I guess, of an agreement we talked about a while back, where Intel was talking about giving part of its profits to the U.S. This is just the U.S. government is just buying a stake in these companies. And this is actually a very, very weird maneuver by the U.S. because the U.S. has obviously bought companies before, right? This is how a lot of the bailout worked. But the thing about, if you look at the bailout from 2008 and you look at the U.S. like purchasing the automakers, the US got these really weird specific shares that don't give it any kind of controlling interest. And here, the direct rationale for this is that the US should just own part of the chip manufacturers because they're effectively like domestic national security resources. Significant portions of the market think that this is going to be a continuing trend and the US is going to continue buying stakes in these companies. There is a sort of symbiotic relationship here in the sense that, like, on the one hand, it's obviously not great to have sort of stakes in you bought by the US government and have US government federal policy directly dictating what these companies do. But on the other hand, it creates, for these actual companies themselves, it creates a sort of symbiosis, right? Where these people now have effectively guaranteed state backing that can bail them out of all of their unbelievably terrible business decisions around basing all of their production around AI. So yeah, and this is all sort of part of the same hyper-nationalist direct...
National socialism, if you will.
Yes, kind of national socialism.
But the most stupid form we've ever seen.
Yeah. I don't know. There's going to be a lot of hype about this being like American state capitalism or something, and just ignore that. Just ignore it. It's bad. I think it's in the same category as a lot of the things here, which is that the Trump administration is trying to consolidate as much power over the economy as they can, both the Federal Reserve and through just straight up controlling parts of companies. This is a trend that's going to continue, and it's not good.
Do you know what is good, though?
You beat me to that exact pivot.
Yeah, that's right. The fact that we get a nice 90 to I don't know, 120 second break to listen to these ads. All right, we are back. There has just been so much news this week. It's kind of outrageous. Trump is continuing his attacks against the Smithsonian for going woke. He's promised a Department of Justice lawsuit against California for their new redistricting map. A GOP House probe has begun to investigate if the DC crime stats have been faked this whole time, making it look like crime is low, even though it's obviously super high, as we all know.
Yeah.
As Mia said, we have socialism now with 10% of Intel. And Trump and Hegseth announced that they want to change the name of the Department of Defense back to the Department of War because it, quote unquote, sounds stronger.
All right, guys.
This is the only one of those that I actually agree with. They should do this. Like, calling it anything other than the Department of War is incredibly dishonest.
Yeah, I wonder if that'll make it harder to get people on board increasing funding.
So it used to be called the Department of War, and it had a stronger sound. And as you know, we won World War I, we won World War II, we won everything. Now we have a Department of Defense with defenders. I don't know. If you people want to, standing behind me, if you take a little vote, if you want to change it back to what it was when we used to win wars all the time, that's okay with me. All right?
That's coming
soon. You let me know if you want to do it. I think Department of War. It just sounded bad. He said, sir, on behalf of the Department of Defense. Defense? I don't want to be defense only. We want defense, but we want offense too, if that's okay. So you'll make a decision. But, you know, as Department of War, we won everything. We won everything. And I think we're going to have to go back to that.
All right, man.
Cool stuff happening in the Oval Office.
I mean, I do like that when he starts that speech, he has to go like, we won World War I. Like he's like, there's a question at the end there where he's like, he's like giving an anal look, right? Like double check that one for me, just make sure. I don't really remember if we won that one or not, but we definitely won the second one and others.
When asked how he would go about changing the name as it requires an act of Congress, Trump replied, quote, "We're just going to do it. I'm sure Congress would go along if we need that. I don't think we even need that. But if we need that, I'm sure Congress will go along."
I don't know that do we need, I don't know what you need to change the name of the Department of Defense.
You do.
Yeah.
You do
okay,
need,
that makes sense
to do that.
On a macro sense, right? What Trump is suggesting here is, wouldn't it simply be more efficient if there was simply a Führer, a single person to make all the decisions?
He said a lot of things in that vein recently, is like Congress being more of a symbolic symbolic branch of government that if we need them, they'll probably just agree with me, but like we don't really need
that's
them.
your standard dictator stuff.
That's how he's been talking about it recently. Now, earlier this week, a redacted transcript of Ghislaine Maxwell's meeting with Trump's DOJ has been released, where she denied that she ever witnessed President Trump engage in inappropriate behavior, saying, quote, "I actually never saw the president in any type of massage setting. The president was never inappropriate with anybody, and at the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects," unquote. She also denied allegations that Prince Andrew ever had sex with a minor in her home, saying that a substantiating photograph is quote-unquote fake.
Well, I can't imagine why she'd lie.
And also claimed that there is no Epstein quote-unquote client list.
Yeah.
So yeah, that all about wraps that up. I think we got to the bottom of the whole Epstein case. We don't need to worry about this anymore.
I would say of all of those, the one of those that I might have believed before she denied it was that there wasn't an additional client list outside of what we've already seen. Like his black people, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't keep all of that many notes on a criminal conspiracy.
Yeah, I don't think he has a list of being like, here's all of my pedophile friends in one place.
Here's what does make me wonder now, and this really is the first time I am, which is that they clearly came to her with a list of, here is all of the things you need to say you didn't see. Like,
maybe. Or she's just savvy enough to know what to say. Like, I don't even think...
Yeah.
We don't even need to allege a larger conspiracy here. I think everyone involved in this is quite savvy and knows what they should say and shouldn't say.
Yeah, I mean, I think the conspiracy is obvious.
Like, that's all there is. There doesn't need to be an explicit quid pro quo here.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to me that she brings up Prince Andrew. If nobody brought that up to her...
No, she was asked about it.
That's what I'm saying, is I believe there's a conversation we're not privy here to where she got marching orders in exchange for getting, she's basically out on work release, right?
I don't need to jump to such outrageous conspiratorial beliefs such as that.
I'm okay with it at this point.
Yeah,
I don't know to what extent it was, but yeah, I don't know. This is pointless. Like
yeah.
I don't know if this helps with his base. I don't know that his base is going to be like, well, if Ghislaine Maxwell says it.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, people have responded positively. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was previously going on a slight offensive on the Epstein thing, has now fully come around, being like, well, there you go. It turns out Trump isn't a pedophile after all. Thank goodness. That was a close call there.
I know this is being disseminated to his influencer network, right? And to the network of people that he uses for stuff like this. I'm wondering about the actual voter base, fan base,
time will tell, I guess.
And the folks who are a step or two further than Marjorie Taylor Greene, the people who are more on the Rogan side of things. Does this really move the needle for them?
Sure.
I hate having to care. Is Joe Rogan going to buy this schlop? But this does seem shameful even for him.
I mean, I think a lot of people can see that there's an incentive for Ghislaine to say certain things. And I think if people are smart enough to understand that I don't think she's going to tell the Trump's own DOJ about a smoking gun involving Trump. Why would that help her try to get a pardon from the president?
Yeah,
I think the important thing for this is that the people who are going to believe this are the people who just don't want to believe that Trump did this, and this is a reinforcing thing that you can feed them. But the question is, what happens with everyone else? And it's not particularly compelling for them.
All right. We have 4 executive orders to get through before we close this episode, starting off with cashless bail. On Monday, Trump signed 2 executive orders targeting cashless bail, one specific to Washington, D.C., which directs law enforcement to charge people federally and hold them in federal custody, and to use federal funding and services as leverage to pressure D.C. to change its cashless bail policies. The other executive order targets cashless bail nationwide and asks the Attorney General to make a list of, quote, states and local jurisdictions that have, in the Attorney General's opinion, substantially eliminated cash bail as a potential condition of pretrial release from custody for crimes that pose a clear threat to public safety and order, including offenses involving violent, sexual, or indecent acts, or burglary, looting, or vandalism. The Attorney General shall update this list as necessary, unquote. So using that list, Trump's cabinet will then, quote, identify federal funds, including grants and contracts currently provided to cashless bail jurisdictions that may be suspended or terminated, unquote. So it's trying to bribe states and local municipalities to cease cashless bail policies using federal funds. The same way that they've tried to do for a whole bunch of other anti-woke policies Trump has tried to force onto unwilling states. Second executive order from August 25th titled Prosecuting Burning of the American Flag. Let's start with a clip from Trump. I don't want to just play super long Trump clips because I know that can be annoying, but the way that he talks about this order is kind of more interesting than the way the order is written. But we will talk about some of those smaller details included in the actual text. But here's a clip from C-SPAN.
Flag burning. All over the country, they're burning flags. All over the world, they burn the American flag. And as you know, through a very sad court, I guess it was a 5-4 decision, they called it freedom of speech. But there's another reason, which is perhaps much more important. It's called death. Because what happens when you burn a flag is the area goes crazy. If you have hundreds of people, they go crazy. You can do other things. You can burn this piece of paper. But when you burn the American flag, it incites riots at levels that we've never seen before. People go crazy. In a way, both ways. There are some that are going crazy for doing it. There are others that are angry about them doing it. Do you want to discuss that?
Sure. So what the executive order does, sir, it charges your Department of Justice with investigating instances of flag burning, and then where there's evidence of criminal activity, where prosecution wouldn't fall afoul of the First Amendment, and instructs the Department of Justice to prosecute those who are engaged in these instances of flag burning.
And what the penalty is going to be, if you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail. No early exits, no nothing. You get 1 year in jail. If you burn a flag, you get. And what it does is incite to riot. I hope they used that language, by the way. Did they?
Yeah, incitement.
Incite to riot.
I love that he has to check.
Yeah.
Because God forbid him actually read what he's citing.
Trump auto pen.
That's right. So included in the order, it says, quote, notwithstanding the Supreme Court's ruling on First Amendment protections, the court has never held that American flag desecration conducted in a manner that is likely to incite imminent lawless action or that is an action amounting to, quote unquote, fighting words is constitutionally protected. See Texas v. Johnson, unquote. The order directs the Attorney General to enforce criminal and civil laws against acts of American flag desecration that cause harm unrelated to First Amendment expression, which could include charging people with violent crimes, hate crimes, illegal discrimination against American citizens, violations of American civil rights, crimes against property and peace, as well as conspiracies and attempts to violate and aiding and abetting others to violate such laws. So it's like an anti-rioting thing. The DOJ will also look for cases where American flag desecration could violate applicable state or local laws, such as open burning restrictions, disorderly conduct laws, or destruction of property laws, and will refer such matters to state and local authorities for potential action. And finally, the Secretary of State shall deny, prohibit, terminate, or revoke visas, residence permits, naturalization proceedings, and other immigration benefits, or seek to deport any foreign national that has engaged in American flag desecration activity. So that's how they're going to go after it. Robert, do you have anything to say on this flag burning thing?
I mean, they're waiting. I mean, and they didn't wind up waiting long. Someone did it immediately, as they knew they would, so that they can get a case that they can take up to the Supreme Court. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They want to prosecute one of these things and appeal it all the way to the Supreme Court to maybe change that ruling so they can apply it more broadly.
Right.
So it's part of the same test that they've done with a number of other things that seems unconstitutional. It seems to violate Supreme Court rulings.
Yeah.
But the point is to test that and see if they can change it, just like they did with abortion.
Yeah.
Can we go further? And if this works, if we feel like we made progress on this, can we start pushing and saying other things are incitement to riot? You know, can we start going after people who aren't even present, who write something that is like, well, this was incitement to riot because they wrote about the police murdering this guy, right? Like,
yeah.
You
the
know,
party of free speech strikes again.
This is the kind of thing where, can I war game out? Would they try this if they can get that far? Yeah, they will if they can get that far. Will they get that far? You know, is the Supreme Court going to give them everything they want on this? I don't actually know. Like, I really don't know. So I'm going to try not to doom spiral too much. Just, you know, let's see. None of us have any choice in the matter at this stage.
Finally, let's address the, quote, additional measures to address the crime emergency in the District of Columbia. So it's another executive order from August 25th. Trump wants to establish an online portal for Americans with law enforcement experience, quote, or other relevant backgrounds and experience to apply to join federal law enforcement entities to support the policy goals described in Executive Order 1433. That's the Making DC Safe and Beautiful order from a few weeks ago.
Right.
The Secretary of Defense is instructed to create and begin training, manning, hiring, and equipping a specialized unit within the District of Columbia National Guard who will be deputized to enforce federal law. To quote the order, quote, "The Secretary of Defense shall immediately begin ensuring that each state's National Army Guard and Air National Guard are resourced, trained, organized, and available to assist federal, state, and local law enforcement in quelling civil disturbances and ensuring the public safety and order whenever the circumstances necessitate, as appropriate under law. In coordination with respective adjuncts general, the Secretary of Defense shall designate an appropriate number of each state's trained National Guard members to be reasonably available for rapid mobilization for such purposes. In addition, the Secretary of Defense shall ensure the availability of a standing National Guard quick reaction force that shall be resourced, trained, and available for rapid nationwide deployment." Unquote. National Guard walking the streets of D.C. are now carrying firearms after first being deployed without their service weapon. And since the operation in D.C. began on August 7th, there have now been over 1,000 arrests, including dozens of undocumented immigrants. Currently, the Pentagon is planning to deploy thousands of National Guard to Chicago to continue Trump's alleged crime crackdown.
I would have much more respect for Pritzker if he'd call me up and say, "I have a problem. Can you help me fix it?" I would be so happy to do it. I don't love, not that I don't have the right to do anything I want to do. I'm the President of the United States. If I think our country's in danger, and it is in danger in these cities, I can do it. No problem going in and solving, his difficulties. But it would be nice if they'd call and they'd say, "Would you do it?"
He's hurt. Poor guy. They won't ask him for help.
His widow feelings. He's gonna have to deploy to National Guard without Pritzker's approval.
Gang, in all of this focus on the people being killed and persecuted by the government, I don't think any of us has stopped and spent enough time thinking, how does Donald Trump feel? And shame on us, Shame on us.
But it's not just Chicago. On Friday, the Pentagon told Fox News that upwards of 1,700 National Guard troops will be mobilized in 19 states to be deployed across the country to assist ICE in the nationwide hunt for undocumented immigrants. The Guard will be activated in states like Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, Ohio, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Virginia, and Wyoming, with effective status ranging from August through mid-November, and operations expected to start in early September. Importantly, as we saw in D.C., National Guard from other states might deploy to other states, specifically in the case where Trump doesn't get cooperation from the governor, who is in control of the National Guard of each state. He can deploy National Guard from somewhere else, like what he did in D.C., pulling National Guard from other red states, being deployed to D.C., but mobilized in those red states. So National Guard from all of these states could be deployed in a town near you, no matter where you live. And this operation specifically with these 1,700 National Guard troops is specifically to assist ICE. His plan to do this anti-crime deployment in Chicago is a separate yet similar plan, which also pulling from National Guard. But these things are two separate operations, according to White House officials.
And I think one of the important things about this is that, obviously there's the part of this where it's they want to, at the very least, look like they're just occupying cities and they are arresting huge numbers of people. But they also just don't have the manpower to do this kind of stuff, which is why they're pulling the National Guard, why they're trying to expand the number of people in ICE. This is why they're pulling National Guard out to do this kind of stuff, which is that they don't actually have the repressive capacity to just occupy cities, and they're trying to find the manpower to be able to do it.
So we will keep an eye out in September for these possible military deployments around the country.
Yep.
Hey everyone, this is Garrison recording a short update on Thursday, since we have a little bit more information about the Minneapolis, Minnesota school shooting. So right after we recorded, rumors started circulating that this shooter was linked to neo-Nazi satanic pedophile groups 09A and 764. Someone on Twitter found a neo-Nazi forum account that they alleged belonged to the school shooter. This account used an O9A symbol, and an affiliated Twitter account made other O9A references. These claims gained a lot of traction from leftist accounts and armchair experts on Twitter and Blue Sky. Lots of people were very eager to talk about something else besides that this shooter was trans, and many pinned the blame on 764, the child exploitation group that operates on Discord and Telegram that blackmails children and encourages some to commit acts of violence like school shootings. I talked about 764 on my Nihilist Violent Extremism episode from earlier this year. As these claims spread online, I remained skeptical because this shooter did not seem to really fit the profile of a O9A or 764 grooming victim. This shooter did not really seem like an O9A acolyte. They more closely resembled the true crime community fandom. And while sometimes True Crime Community or TCC may use O9A references because other mass shooters have, or because previous mass shooters have been affiliated with O9A and related groups, I did not see much evidence linking this shooter to O9A based on the videos they posted to YouTube. And while some Nazi Satanist types have helped facilitate the Columbiner or TCC fandom, there was no solid evidence linking a group like 764 to this latest shooting. The shooter was in their mid-20s. They weren't a 14-year-old being groomed into doing a mass shooting. And then on Thursday morning, the forum account alleged to be the Minneapolis shooter, and the source of claims calling them a O9A or 764 grooming victim, started posting again on the forum. It wasn't the shooter's account. The shooter did not fit that profile. They weren't an occult Nazi Satanist. They were obsessed with mass killers. And translations of their Cyrillic journal have helped to substantiate this. A journal entry discussed taking pleasure in dressing up as a school shooter. Quote, "Today I assembled a school shooter cosplay," unquote. And in translations of their journal, they made explicit references to True Crime Community, TCC, saying that they might cringe if they joined an online TCC community, and it could make them not want to follow through on doing an attack, viewing online TCC fandom as mostly full of posers. Quote, "I think joining a community would alienate my future," unquote. And, quote, "I feel a very small portion of TCC feels as I do, harbors admiration of intent," unquote. One more update before I close the episode. Earlier today on Thursday, RFK Jr. was asked if he would now be looking into if gender transition drugs cause violence. He responded by saying that they were already doing studies looking into that, and then quickly pivoted to talking about, quote, "launching studies on the potential contribution of some of the SSRI drugs and some of the other psychiatric drugs that might be contributing to violence," unquote. This lines up with RFK Jr.'s general focus on psychiatric drugs, SSRIs, depression medication, as he has previously stated. That's all for us today on It Could Happen Here. We reported the news.
We reported the news.
Hey, we'll be back Monday with more episodes every week from now until the heat death of the universe.
It Could Happen Here is a production of Cool Zone Media. For more podcasts from Cool Zone Media, visit our website, coolzonemedia.com, or check us out on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can now find sources for It Could Happen Here listed directly in episode descriptions. Thanks for listening.
Life gets messy. Spills, stains, pet accidents, and kid chaos. But with Anabei, cleaning up is easy. Our sofas are fully machine washable, inside and out, so you never have to stress about messes again. Made with liquid and stain-resistant fabrics, that means fewer stains and more peace of mind. Designed for real life, our sofas feature changeable fabric covers, allowing you to refresh your style anytime. Need flexibility? Our modular design lets you rearrange your sofa effortlessly. Perfect for cozy apartments or spacious homes. Plus, they're earth-friendly and built to last. That's why over 200,000 happy customers have made the switch. Upgrade your space today. Sofas start at just $699. Visit washablesofas.com now and bring home a sofa made for life. That's washablesofas.com. Offers are subject to change and certain restrictions may apply.
Flag football is exploding, and iFlag is leading the way. As the Guinness World Record holder, iFlag hosts premier flag football tournaments nationwide for boys, girls, high school girls, and adults. From first-time players to elite competitors, iFlag delivers top-level competition, unforgettable experiences, and a community built around the game. Ready to be part of it? Join the movement. Find your tournament and learn more at iflag.org. That's iflag.org.
This is Radhi Devlukia from A Really Good Cry. I absolutely love being outdoors, even if it's just stepping outside for a bit of fresh air between meals or taking a mindful walk to clear my head. But the one thing that can really ruin that is when my feet feel cramped in my shoes. So I switched to ultra running, and honestly, it makes such a difference. What I love most is their signature Ultra Fit Comfort Balance Strength. They have this roomy toe box that lets my toes actually spread and move naturally. So I really appreciate that. And I feel more grounded and balanced with every single step. It's like my feet can finally do their job, using all those little muscles that make me feel stronger the more I move. Whether you are a marathon runner, beginner, or advanced, or just getting outside to train, Ultras have become my go-to for running and moving mindfully. They fit so well, they're so comfortable, and they just move with you. Shop now at ultrarunning.com and use my code CRY10 for 10% off. That's ALTRA running.com. Experience Ultra and stay out there.
The new Chicken Bacon Ranch Street Chalupa is at Taco Bell. You can't get just one. Okay, so that's not like some marketing hyperbole. You literally can't get just one. They come in twos. So like, if you want just one, you're going to need to find a friend who loves slow-roasted chicken, bacon, and avocado ranch sauce. Or a friend of a friend, or have an awkward conversation with a complete stranger to see if they're obsessed with chicken, bacon, and avocado ranch. Or you could just like eat them both because you're obsessed with slow-roasted chicken, bacon. Okay, you get the idea. The new Chicken Bacon Ranch Street Chalupa is at Taco Bell. At participating Taco Bell U.S. locations for a limited time while supplies last.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.